The King's Avatar audiobook by Kevin the King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation Chapter 181 Chapter 181. In a flash Poplar Beach noticed it just now, but it was already too late. His opponent had already thrown out a grenade. The timing was perfect. The shock wave from the explosion launched his blade master even higher into the air as chasing haze picked up her rose flower cannon. Seeing his opponent move like this, Poplar Beach finally realized. Throwing down the rose flower cannon was one of the opponent's ploys. Chasing Haze crouched and swung the rose flower cannon back onto her shoulder. Blue light began to accumulate at the mouth of the cannon. Poplar Beach moved his camera to look down. Just before his character hit the ground, the stored blue light shot out, and a brilliant blue artillery shell flew directly at him. X1 extruder. Poplar Beach realized that his opponent's crouch and swing wasn't without meaning. The crouch reduced the time needed to put the cannon onto her shoulder. It also let him shoot from a lower height, making it so that the X1 extruder would hit him just as he was about to land on the ground. X1 extruder's feature was that it would vacuum in enemies that were hit by it, restricting their movements. The enemies would then fly forward along with it, and then explode when it hit the ground, knocking the enemies to the ground along with it. Poplar Beach didn't have any way of avoiding this vacuum effect. This time, damage would be certain. Just as he was calculating what he would do next to counterattack, he suddenly saw his opponent raise his hand and snap his fingers. Poplar Beach was startled. This wasn't a random movement. This was the casting animation for a launcher's heat-seeking missile. The finger snap would bring up a crosshair. The final position of the crosshair would direct where the missile would land. The attack did tons of damage, but the weakness of it was obvious. For one, the crosshair had to be accurate. However, the main weakness was that it was extremely slow. Poplar Beach decided he would do the same as with the quantum bomb and slice it apart. In midair, a sword light flashed forward. Sword draw was executed towards the missile. This move had been used in that match between Excellent Era and 301. Team 301's Blade Master player Gao Zhi had done this to dissolve the heat-seeking missile. Poplar Beach's situation was similar to Gao Zhi's situation. Both of them acted in midair. However, Poplar Beach wasn't as skilled as a pro player. Poplar Beach could only pray that his sword draw would hit the target. Please hit. Seeing the flying slash's direction and the missile's arc, Poplar Beach determined that they would collide, and a surge of happiness immediately washed over him. But who would have thought that at this moment, an explosion would suddenly ring out? Sword Slash's sword aura had been exploded into 3 sparks. Poplar Beach was startled. He looked over at Chasing Haze and saw gentle smoke drift out from the mouth of the cannon. SHT. Poplar Beach's sword slash had been deflected by his opponent's anti-tank missile. The flying heat-seeking missile flew towards him. Poplar Beach felt a chill in his heart. He knew that his difficult maneuver had been done out of luck, but what about his opponent? The bright crosshair finally found its target. A loud boom sounded out from up above in the sky, and a heat-seeking missile descended down. Poplar Beach began to fall. He had no way of immediately using quick recover. He hadn't been launched in a normal way. He had been sucked in by X1 extruder. The crosshair, Poplar Beach, and the suction from the X1 extruder together let the heat-seeking missile arrive, and a large mushroom cloud leapt into the air. But things weren't done yet. Poplar Beach, who had been forced tumbling in the air from the shock wave, saw a large laser beam shoot down, the gunner's ultimate, satellite beam. Poplar Beach had eaten all of the launcher's high-damage skills. Poplar Beam was still tumbling from the explosion and light of the satellite beam. Ye Xiu used this time to quickly throw out a few more skills. The spectators watched dumbstruck as explosions continued to chain together, reaching a 77 combo. The light from explosions receded. The smoke dispersed. Poplar Beach had already been defeated, starting from when he was launched into the air by that knee strike to the instant he landed on the ground. He wasn't able to find any opportunity to counterattack. In that span of 5 seconds, how many skills had hit him? The spectators had to count on their fingers to work it out. Everyone saw the result. Poplar Beach had been defeated. Defeated. He really had been defeated. In just an instant, the long health bar had been washed clean. The spectators weren't even able to type. They were completely dumbstruck. Chen Guo was also staring blankly at the computer screen. She was already standing because Ye Xiu had thrown her rose flower cannon. She was just about to go over and kill the guy. However, her rose flower cannon had been picked back up, and in the blink of an eye, the opponent had turned into a corpse. All of this happened as she jumped up from her seat. Chen Guo finally saw how Ye Xiu was able to beat an opponent in a few seconds using her chasing haze. Chen Guo had never thought that her chasing haze had the burst power to explode someone to death in one go. Moreover, the person who had died was a famous expert in the heavenly domain. Chen Guo felt a surge of excitement. She had originally wanted to go and strangle Ye Xiu to death, but now she couldn't move. She didn't know how to describe what she was feeling. Poplar Beach's corpse quickly disappeared. The experienced gamers knew that this person had already left the room. What could Poplar Beach say now? The arrogant him had been completely shut up. There was nothing he could say. He realized that Lord Grimm's words weren't a provocation, but a reality. One round, it really was one round. He completely recognized the gap between their skill. To lose so quickly and tragically, this wasn't a question of whether it was luck. The match ended so quickly that the spectators had overlooked another reality. This was a perfect match. Chasing Haze hadn't suffered any damage. Once Chasing Haze left the room as well, the room was naturally dissolved and the spectators were kicked back into the lobby. But everyone was still in shock and were still circling about. Only Ye Xiu didn't care. He took off his headphones and turned his head. "Boss, you can have your account back." "Huh." Chen Guo was also one of those who were dumbstruck. "Did you record it?" Chen Guo suddenly turned her head to ask Tang Ru. Tang Ru laughed bitterly. "You were the one controlling it." Ah. Everyone had already left the room. How could she still have the chance to record it? Chen Guo felt regretful. It would have been such a great video. It was something she could watch 100 times. Chen Guo felt depressed. She suddenly discovered something amiss. She looked around and discovered that a few people were looking at her. "What are you looking at?" Chen Guo wasn't very polite. The people looking at her were frequent customers, so they knew each other. She hadn't done anything out of the ordinary, so what were they all looking at? "Boss, you're so fierce," someone suddenly said. "What?" Chen Guo stared blankly. "Chasing Haze," someone else shouted. "What? Chasing Haze? Where? Another person jumped up. This time it was a customer Chen Guo didn't recognize. Chen Guo instantly understood. This duel had been seen by some in the internet cafe. Among those were a few who didn't know that Lord Grimm was a manager at this internet cafe, but they did know that Chen Guo's glory character was Chasing Haze. After that, they thought that Lord Grimm was actually Chen Guo. And those unfamiliar customers obviously didn't know anything. They just heard someone in the internet cafe speak up about it, so they immediately looked for her and crowded around her. Chen Guo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She looked around but didn't know where Ye Xiu had slipped away to. She could helplessly cry out, "That wasn't me. Someone else borrowed my account and then hastily ran off." The customers all stared blankly. They didn't say anything else. The crowd was just there to satisfy their curiosity in reality. Most of the glory players that knew Chen Guo knew what her skill level was. It was just that the previous match had been too surprising. Poplar Beach. All the veterans knew who he was, and thus, saying that someone had borrowed the account was very reasonable. There weren't many who both recognized Chen Guo's account and watched the match, so there wasn't too much commotion. Everyone went back to the game to discuss about it in private. This match was too quick. Not only was the course of events quick, even the room had been dissolved quickly, making it so that there wasn't any place for everyone to talk about it. After the players left the arena, they immediately began discussing it in the World Channel. In a short moment, a single topic conquered the 10th server World Channel. Lord Grimm, chasing Hayes, launcher, threw down his weapon, instant kill, etc. These were all keywords. The match was too frightening, making it so that everyone was concentrated on the one who was victorious. At this moment, Poplar Beach was like a pitiful backdrop. Very few people mentioned him. There were a few new players who didn't really understand. They obviously didn't know how incredible Poplar Beach's background was. They just saw that he had been instantly defeated, so they wanted to mock him. But their mockery was actually met with others' mockery. Who won and who lost the match wasn't because one side was weak, but rather because the other side was too strong. In everyone's eyes, this was the impression they got. Of course, no one felt that Poplar Beach's loss was dignified. However, his defeat wasn't the main point everyone was talking about. Chasing Hayes so strong, launchers so strong, Lord Grimm so strong. These were the main points. The King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 182, Chapter 182. Consultation. The match was beautiful, and the reaction to it was massive. But to the big guilds, its impact wasn't as great as the record that had been set in Desolate Land. The big guilds recognized the result and talked about it for a bit. However, there was no way it would be put above Blue Brook Guild's tarnished image. The only ones who were truly concerned over the match was Blue Brook Guild. Currently, the 10th server's Blue Brook Guild was completely silent. Everyone silently watched the discussion go on in the World Channel. Don't look at how the highest among them were only level 33. The people behind those characters, the senior players in Blue Brook Guild like Changing Spring, were all there. However, Poplar Beach wasn't there. After he had left the arena, he directly logged out of the Heavenly Domain, but didn't log into his 10th server account. Even if he was arrogant right now, he felt too ashamed to meet other guild members. Lowering Poplar Beach's arrogance might have been the only reward that Blue Brook Guild received. However, seeing the situation in front of them, Lord Grimm's strength was too ridiculous. It was quite possible that Poplar Beach might have been hurt too much from this match. Which of you went and watched it? Changing Spring asked. Whenever they talked about guild matters, Changing Spring usually had the characters find a place to meet up at. The reason was because their guild leader Changing Spring really wasn't fond of typing. I watched it. Blue River let out a sigh as he spoke. What did you think of it? Pretty much identical to how the World Channel is describing it. They're not exaggerating, because there's really isn't any way to exaggerate it, Blue River said. This Lord Grimm really didn't leave us with anything, Flying Brushstroke said. I think it's the exact opposite. I think the way he did things actually left us with room to recover. Blue River said, if you take a look at the World Channel, most of them are discussing about how strong Lord Grimm was. There was not anything else being talked about. To us, these results aren't too bad. Sigh. Changing Spring also sighed. This Lord Grimm really isn't easy to deal with. After our dungeon record was beaten, all the popularity we had recovered dropped again. Today, the number of players who wanted to join our guild fell by 70%, Blue River said. Line Canyon, isn't that the one we said we wouldn't fight tyrannical ambition over? Changing Spring asked. Yeah, then it looks like the only thing we can do for now is endure, Changing Spring said somewhat regretfully. That Bound Boat had also come to the meeting. In the 10th server, he was second only to Blue River. However, everyone present at the moment were all the seniors in the Heavenly Domain. As a result, Bound Boat clearly seemed smaller. His words also seemed like they were hesitant. Oh, Bound Boat, what do you have in mind? Changing Spring asked. He knew the important players they had sent over to Pioneer. Maybe we can ask the teams to help us. even though these are only low-level dungeons. Which of the current 10th server records are achievable for us? Not just Lord Grimm's records, but that Frost Forest record set by Excellent Dynasty as well. Fortunately, these were made in the new servers. If these were made in the old servers, then these records would have been suspected of being set by pros a long time ago. No, Boundboat said. In the 10th server, there were only records for Frost Forest, Boneyard, and Desolate Land. However, it was just like how Boundboat had described it. The 3 records were all records that surpassed their limits. Changing Spring and the others were all at the top of the normal players, yet even they were crushed by Lord Grimm's team. This was a clear and terrifying reality. Where exactly did these guys come from? The background of Lord Grimm and these others couldn't be small. The word pro-level began to spiral around their minds. That's why I say we should look for the experts in the team to help us appraise them. Boundboat said, this suggestion truly is quite good. Changing Spring nodded his head. They weren't asking them to substitute. They were only asking to chat with the club's experts on these incredible records and request for an appraisal. That wouldn't be difficult to do. All right then, I'm going to go and ask. Changing Spring decided on this. The people who were participating in the meeting all had weird expressions on their faces. For the pioneering in the new server to be so shocking that they even needed pro players to come out, this was something they had never even dreamed of before. If they knew that the entire champion team Tiny Herb had come to the 10th server for training, their blood pressure would probably shoot up. I'll be leaving first then. Changing Spring informed everyone. He was also someone who handled things straightforwardly. After logging out, Changing Spring looked at the time. Right now, the team should be doing their afternoon practice. Changing Spring ran the Blue Brook Guild in glory in place of Club Blue Rain. He was just like Chen Yehui in Excellent Era. He could be considered as one of the club's official staff members, so he had some say in the club's matters. Changing Spring often came to the team to look around, so he wouldn't be considered unfamiliar with the pro players. He'd sometimes even have the chance to compare notes with the team members. Of course, if the pro players wanted to play 2 rounds with him for fun, Changing Spring wouldn't refuse. However, if he went actively look for pro players to play with him, he would be suspected of wasting their time. Changing Spring understood this. Changing Spring calculated the time and chose to go at a suitable time. He didn't have too many restrictions when walking around in the club. Besides going to the tech team who researched self-made equipment, there wasn't anywhere he wasn't allowed to go to. Hi Senior Chun, Changing Spring had chosen a good time. He arrived just as Team Blue Rain finished practice, a time when everyone was relaxing. When he appeared in front of the entrance, someone saw him and greeted him. Changing Spring's real name was Liang Yichun, so the people who were familiar with him called him Senior Chun. Hi. Changing Spring waved his hands at the pro player that greeted him. The pro player was a guy called Li Yuan. He was a new player in Blue Rain. He wasn't as cautious and careful like the majority of new players were. After the young guy joined the team, he was extremely energetic and was always very friendly with everyone. He quickly became familiar with everyone including Changing Spring. With his greeting, the other pros who hadn't known that Changing Spring had come turned their heads and looked at him. The majority of the pros nodded their heads as a greeting and then went back to doing whatever they were doing before. However, Yu Wenzhou got up and walked over to him. Senior Chun's come over. Yeah, I'm here to take a look, Changing Spring said politely. Yu Wenzhou, Team Blue Rain's team captain. Most of the team captains were also the team's ace player, but there would obviously be a few exceptions. Blue Rain's ace player was Huang Xiaoshan, but their team captain was Yu Wenzhou. Even though Yu Wenzhou's mechanics weren't as good as Huang Xiaoshan's, his ability in strategy and tactics were extraordinary. Moreover, that Huang Xiaoshan's constant chatter pulled down his demeanor. The words of someone who was always talking would feel somewhat frivolous to others. You haven't been here in a while. Yu Wenzhou treated him politely as well, seeing that Changing Spring had come to talk with him about something. Changing Spring also knew that Team Blue Rain's captain was relatively easy to speak with, unlike tyrannical ambitions Jiang Yu, who was so hesitant. If Blue Rain's captain had been so fierce like Han Wenqing, he definitely wouldn't have immediately logged offline to go look for him. Yeah, I've been busy. The pioneering in the 10th server, Changing Spring began to ease into the topic. It's just pioneering, as if you needed to personally lead, right? Yu Wenzhou chuckled. He knew how the club's guild operated in general. But this time's 10th server is too different, Changing Spring said very seriously. Oh, what do you mean? A bunch of experts suddenly popped up out of nowhere. All of the low-level dungeon records that have been set in the 10th server so far are above the all-time records. It looks as if they were all done by pro players. Changing Spring said. Crash. A loud crash resounded in the practice room, along with 3 or 4 players crying out in alarm. Huang Xiao, are you okay? What happened? It's nothing, I slipped, that's all. Huang Xiaoshan said ashen-faced as he supported himself up with his chair. Seeing that Changing Spring was looking at him in astonishment, he hastily waved his hand. Senior Chun, you're here. Ha ha ha, long time no see. You're free today, have you eaten yet? You probably haven't eaten, right, lucky you. It'll be time to eat soon. You should eat some food before you go. Sure. Changing Spring repeatedly nodded his head. He didn't dare say anything too much or else he wouldn't hear the end of it. Do you have a 10th server account card? Let's take a look at the records, Yu Wenzhou said. I do. Changing Spring took out a card and gave it to Yu Wenzhou. Of course he had prepared everything beforehand. Yu Wenzhou found a random computer to sit down at and logged into the game. At the same time, without turning his head, he also said, Xiaoshan, you should come and look too. There wasn't any response from behind him. Huang Xiaoshan was wearing his headphones, acting as if he hadn't heard anything. The players beside him pushed him. Huang Xiao, captain's calling for you. Ah, what is it? Huang Xiaoshan took off his headphones and turned around to ask. Come over here to look at the 10th server records, Yu Wenzhou said. Huang Xiaoshan had no choice but to get up. As he walked over, he asked, 10th server, the new server, what's there to look at? Whoa, the records really are incredible. Yu Wenzhou had already entered the game and directly clicked on the record leaderboards. Xiaoshan, how do you think these records were made? Yu Wenzhou asked the King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 183. Chapter 183, Blue Rain Team Captain. After looking at the leaderboards for each of the 3 dungeons, Yu Wenzhou turned his head to ask Huang Xiaoshan. Huang Xiaoshan stood behind him. He lifted his hand to scratch his chin and shook head. I haven't played these dungeons for so long, so I can't tell just by looking at the time. Do you recognize any of the players who set the record? Is there anything special about them? Do you know what their classes and equipment are? Huang Xiaoshan said to Changing Spring. Oh, the key player is Lord Grimm. Changing Spring pointed at the name that appeared in all 3 leaderboards. Among these, Frost Forest was ranked 2nd on its leaderboard, while Boneyard and Desolate Land were number 1 on their respective leaderboards. What about this person? Huang Xiaoshan asked. This player's character hasn't changed classes. He's an unspecialized character. In addition, the weapon in his hands is really weird. It can change into other weapon forms and use low-leveled skills from all sorts of classes, Changing Spring said. There was no way to hide the 1000-chance umbrella, which was why Ye Xiu never bothered to conceal it. Experts like Blue River, who had seen him in action, had already seen through what it was. Oh, so such a weapon exists. Yu Wenzhou heard this, and his interest rose by quite a bit. Before, he had a general idea of why Changing Spring had come, so he was just being polite. But now these words had grabbed his attention. This type of weapon is definitely self-made. It sounds like it was made specially for unspecialized characters, Huang Xiaoshan said. Unspecialized. Yu Wenzhou clearly knew about this type of playing style. If this is true, then this weapon really would be able to let an unspecialized fully utilize his strengths. The early unspecialized characters were weighed down because switching weapons had a cooldown, which made it so that there were a lot of flaws whenever they tried to combo. They weren't able to perfectly link together all of the many low-leveled skills. But with this weapon, this issue is solved. Plus, if it has silver weapon attributes, then the damage output would be even greater than orange weapons. With a character like this in a team, then their damage output would naturally be a grade higher than the usual teams. This player really is the key character, Huang Xiaoshan said. Yu Wenzhou nodded his head, clearly showing that he agreed with what Huang Xiaoshan said. He then looked at the other members in Lord Grimm's teams. What about the others? These three are fixed members in Lord Grimm's teams. One of them is a battle mage, one is a launcher, and there's also a brawler. Their skill levels are quite high. The other spot doesn't seem to be fixed. In Frost Forest, this player is from Tyrannical Ambition. In Boneyard, this flowing tree is a blade master. At the time, he joined our Blue Brook Guild. He never said anything and then never went online again after setting that record. Finally, this 1-inch Ash appeared recently, so we don't really know much about him. What about this excellent dynasty team in Frost Forest? Yu Wenzhou asked. Changing Spring immediately told them the situation for this excellent dynasty team. This was something they had investigated on before. They were clearly substituted players. This is a new server with new players. There's no way those types of players could create such a record. Yu Wenzhou said. That's what I thought as well, Changing Spring said. And these players definitely weren't ordinary. If you look at the record done by Excellent Dynasty done in Boneyard, this just happened to be done around the time we had our match with Excellent Era. Excellent Era's vice-captain Liu Hao made numerous low-leveled mistakes in the match. His condition was strangely bad. It looks like this guy ran to the new server and split his attention onto setting these records. Yu Wenzhou said, No way. For a low-level dungeon like this, shouldn't it be easy for a pro player to set a record? It shouldn't go so far as to affect his performance in the match, right? Changing Spring said. This Boneyard record isn't normal. What do you think, Xiaoshan? Yu Wenzhou said. Huang Xiaoshan nodded his head. This Boneyard record is no longer a question of skill. It isn't possible to set this record purely on skill. In the new server, there's no way they'd have too many good equipment yet, which means that the only way they'd have been able to improve the record would be to create a strategy more outstanding than previous ones. As expected of Huang Xiao, Changing Spring couldn't help but gasp in astonishment. They had looked over this record who knew how many times, yet they weren't able to be certain about such a conclusion. Perhaps only God-level players with incredible judgment like Huang Xiaoshan would dare be so confident in their answer. If you say it like this, then not only was this excellent dynasty record substituted in by Liu Hao, he even spent a lot of energy to research a new strategy just for this dungeon. And this was why his condition during the match wasn't good. Changing Spring concluded, I'm afraid it's not just that. This guy might not have researched a new strategy, but rather stole a new strategy. Yu Wenzhou said. What? The record set by the new strategy appeared 3 times. Yu Wenzhou tapped the screen as he said, for 2 teams to have coincidentally come up with the same strategy at the same time, look at the first record set by Lord Grimm. In this team, there's a player called Hateful Sword, but after this record was beat by Excellent Dynasty, Lord Grimm's team no longer has a Hateful Sword in it, but a player called Flowing Tree instead. These 2 characters are of different classes, but in this dungeon, Blade Masters aren't any stronger than Berserkers. If the Blade Master player was more skilled than the Berserker player, then why didn't they just directly use the Blade Master the first time? So the most likely possibility was that this new strategy was researched by Lord Grimm. This berserker hateful sword was someone from excellent dynasty who had gotten into the team. He then went with them to learn the new strategy, and then went back to lead excellent dynasty's players to set a new record. There was obviously no way Lord Grimm could look for this hateful sword's help again, which was why he found this blade master, flowing tree. Changing Spring was startled. Yu Wenzhou was able to figure out things he hadn't even thought of before. The time the record came out, excellent dynasty's background, the terrible performance of Liu Hao during the match. Yu Wenzhou had noticed so many small details. This Blue Rain team captain wasn't just a person who knew how to keep the team together like those on the outside said. This type of judgment and perception wasn't below Huang Xiaoshen's in the slightest. No, he might even be better than Huang Xiaoshen in this aspect. At least at this moment, Huang Xiaoshen hadn't made such a deduction. Team captain, you've got to be exaggerating. This sounds like a plot from some fiction novel. Not only did he not make the deduction, Huang Xiaoshen even doubted Yu Wenzhou's deduction. Could Liu Hao have gone crazy? He would actually put in so much effort for a dungeon in a new server. How could Huang Xiaoshen only have said that? He had to keep going. Ha ha, that's certainly true. That's why there might be some other special reason that made him place so much importance onto this record. He had directly competed against Lord Grimm for Frost Forest. After that, he even infiltrated Lord Grimm's team to spy on them. It seems like he also places a lot of importance on this Lord Grimm. To be able to make a pro player think of him as an enemy, this Lord Grimm definitely isn't any weaker than him. I have a feeling that Liu Hao is well aware who Lord Grimm is. His hostile actions seem to be concealing his fear, acknowledgement, and trust. Because of this fear, he ran to spy on them. Because of his acknowledgement, he stole his strategy and directly used it. Because of his trust, he trusted that the strategy being used was already the most optimal choice. There wouldn't be any strategy better than it. Changing Spring's jaw dropped in astonishment. To be able to make an analysis to such an extent, he couldn't help but look at Huang Xiaoshen, who was also listening. He realized that Huang Xiaoshen wasn't amazed in the slightest at this. He seemed as calm as ever. He really is Huang Xiao. Changing Spring once again gasped. Perhaps there were many who felt like Huang Xiaoshen wasn't calm enough due to his constant chatter. However, in reality, as the most outstanding player in seizing opportunities, Huang Xiaoshen was completely calm on the inside. Only with this inner calmness was he able to possess such keen awareness of the battlefield and find the most optimal opportunity to strike. That's why I think that if we want to know who Lord Grimm is, then we should just directly call Liu Hao and ask him. Liu Hao's phone number, I should have it. Yu Wenzhou smiled, but then quickly followed. Oh, I didn't bring my cell phone with me. They weren't allowed to bring their cell phones into the practice room. This was a rule that a lot of clubs had. Changing Spring looked forward to it. He looked forward to knowing the answer. He obviously hoped that Yu Wenzhou would be a bit more active. But seeing that Yu Wenzhou didn't have his cell phone and didn't intend on going to get it, Changing Spring felt somewhat disappointed. He didn't dare urge the team captain, but at this moment maybe he could ask. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Yu Wenzhou patted his pocket and laughed. Actually, someone who Liu Hao was enemies with, was scared of, was acknowledged by and trusted. There's no need to ask. I already know who he is. Who is he? Changing Spring blurted out. Ye Xiu, Yu Wenzhou said. God, Ye Xiu. Changing Spring didn't know what to do to express his astonishment. Xiaoshen, have you talked to Ye Xiu recently? Yu Wenzhou asked. Nope, after that guy retired, he just seemed to have evaporated. Maybe he was kidnapped by aliens, Huang Xiaoshen said. He doesn't use cell phones, right? Yu Wenzhou said. Yeah. It looks like he was kidnapped by aliens to the 10th server to continue playing Glory, unspecialized Lord Grimham. We might even see him appear in a match again someday, Yu Wenzhou said. Changing Spring had many things he wanted to say but didn't know how to start. Yu Wenzhou and Huang Xiaoshan didn't seem to have any reaction to such a conclusion. After a few moments of thinking, Yu Wenzhou lifted his head and looked up at the clock on the wall of the practice room. He suddenly stood up. "It's time to eat," Yu Wenzhou said. Yeah, it's time to eat, it's time to eat. Come with us, Changing Spring. Do you know where the cafeteria is? I'll bring you there." Huang Xiaoshan put his arm around Changing Spring and dragged him out. The King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 184. Chapter 184, That's a Strength too. The club's food was quite delicious, and for team members, the food was free. Of course, other club staff could come and eat as well, but they didn't get to enjoy the same benefits as the team members. Changing Spring didn't have those benefits either, however. He followed Huang Xiaoshan and used his status to get in for free. It was just that he was practically unable to taste the food that went into his mouth. Changing Spring's mind was still on what Yu Wenzhou had analyzed earlier. Lord Grimm is God, Ye Xiu. This news took a long time for Changing Spring to digest, at least, when compared to his dinner. In his heart, whether it was him or Blue River, they had already respected Lord Grimm. They had recognized that he had a very high skill level, but they had never expected such an outcome. Ye Xiu, that was a power at the very peak of glory. Even though he was retired now, he was still more than enough to tidy up whatever he wanted in game. This could be seen just by how easily Poplar Beach had been tidied up. If this had taken place during God Ye Xiu's prime with his battle god One Autumn Leaf, who knew how terrible Poplar Beach would have been crushed. Changing Spring originally had a few methods he planned on using to fight against Lord Grimm, but after knowing his identity, his heart suddenly dropped. What should he do now? Changing Spring felt that the food in front of him tasted like wax. Sitting at the same table were Yu Wenzhou and Huang Xiaoshan, but the two were casually chatting with each other. They didn't seem very surprised about Ye Xiu. After all, after thinking about it, they were pro players as well, so there wasn't anything too surprising. Ye Xiu had retired, but what was wrong with returning to the game to play? It only affected normal players who would feel somewhat pressured by God competing with them. After eating, he decided to leave. Yu Wenzhou and Huang Xiaoshan didn't mention Ye Xiu again. Yu Wenzhou was still as friendly as ever and even accompanied him out, but when they parted he said a few final words. "That Lord Grimm, especially his weapon, try and pay more attention to it, please." Ah. Oh, with this sudden mention of Lord Grimm, Changing Spring finally responded. In theory, the team captain didn't have any power over Changing Spring for in-game guild matters. However, everyone knew that pro players were the core of the club, who wouldn't take what they said seriously. Changing Spring placed importance on what Yu Wenzhou requested. "I'll be going then," Changing Spring said and then left. After turning around, Yu Wenzhou saw Huang Xiaoshan going back to his room and immediately called for him. "What do you want?" Huang Xiaoshan replied. Yu Wenzhou walked over and went into Huang Xiaoshan's room along with him. "What commands do you have, Captain?" Huang Xiaoshan asked. Yu Wenzhou stood beside a table. He grabbed a pen on the table and began playing with it. "Last time when we had the match versus Excellent Era, if I remember correctly, you left at night to do something." "Huh. There was something like that day." Let me think," Huang Xiaoshan said. "Was it to go and meet with Ye Xiu?" Yu Wenzhou asked. Not a peep came out of Huang Xiaoshan. "The time you left matches the time when that record was set. The Blade Master on that team, Flowing Tree, was you, right?" Yu Wenzhou said. "Flowing Tree? Yeah, that name does sound a bit familiar. How could that be? How strange," Huang Xiaoshan said. "Ha ha," Yu Wenzhou laughed. He didn't comment on Huang Xiaoshan's acting and followed. "What type of weapon is Ye Xiu's unspecialized weapon?" Huang Xiaoshan's expression immediately turned serious. "Without a doubt, it's just like I said before, it's a weapon specially made for unspecialized characters. The attack, definitely silver weapon level. Are there any special attributes? I couldn't tell. It doesn't look like it has any. Its attack speed. It has the same attack speed for every form. It should have an attack speed of 5. What forms does it have? From what I've seen, he can use skills from every class, Huang Xiaoshan said. The level, he probably knows how to upgrade it, Huang Xiaoshan said. This type of weapon paired with Ye Xiu, it looks like we'll get a chance to see a true unspecialized. Yu Wenzhou said with lament. But it'll have to be at least a year later, Huang Xiaoshan said. Unspecialized, huh? Yu Wenzhou looked out the window as if in deep thought. Glory 10th server. Changing Spring immediately returned to log into the game. Chilling Nightfall, Flying Brushstroke, and the others hadn't returned to the heavenly domain yet. They were still using the accounts they had borrowed and were waiting for Changing Spring to return with the news. Bluebrook Guild's 5 great experts gathered together once again, along with Blue River's right-hand man, Bound Boat. What they say? After seeing Changing Spring, they immediately asked him. Changing Spring let out a sigh. He had been shocked already. It was their turn now. Captain, you figured out who Lord Grimm is, Changing Spring said. Who is he? Everyone asked. Ye Xiu. Changing Spring pretended to be calm when he said this. What? Everyone acted as if they hadn't heard clearly. Ye Xiu, battle god one autumn leaf, that Ye Xiu, Changing Spring said. No way, Flying Brushstroke yelled out in astonishment. Who was Lord Grimm? This was a question they had discussed numerous times ever since they had learned about him. But even their most outrageous speculations couldn't compare to the truth. Lord Grimm was actually God Ye Xiu. Blue River didn't know why, but he felt somewhat excited. Even though Huang Xiaoshan was his favorite pro player, the mysterious god Ye Xiu was someone who was worthy of worshipping as well. Seeing Lord Grimm on his friends list, Blue River couldn't help but feel like saying a few words to him. At this moment he had already forgotten that he was the main reason that caused them so much trouble in the 10th server. So he was actually God Ye Xiu all along. I never would have thought of that. What should we do then? Luckily, Bound Boat was there. This issue pulled Blue River back in. God Ye Xiu would be a difficult opponent. Blue River was finally aware of the cruel reality. However, if it was because they were against God Ye Xiu, then retreating wouldn't be shameful, right? Blue River suddenly felt a lot more relaxed. At this moment, Changing Spring began to talk. Even though we know that our opponent is God Ye Xiu, there's no change in plans. We just have to understand how grim our circumstances are. Against God Ye Xiu, there's nothing we can do about setting the records. On how we're going to fight against him. This isn't a matter for our Blue Brook Guild. The ambitious and able guilds in the 10th server will need to rally together. Even if it's for giving materials, we should still rally. Changing Spring's final words made even himself not know whether to laugh or cry. I think if everyone knows that he's God Ye Xiu, then there wouldn't be any more pointless fights, Blue River said. The problem is, we all believe this, but if you say this to the other guilds, will they believe us? Changing Spring asked. Everyone was silent. They understood how suspicious and cautious other guilds were towards each other. Since it turned out to be like this, why don't we think about this some more? If we know Lord Grimm's identity, is there any way we can use this to our advantage? Changing Spring said. The rest will depend on what Blue Bridge decides to do. Changing Spring suddenly changed the topic. Me. Right. After all, these are all 10th server matters, Changing Spring said. Right. Blue Bridge, you can do it, Flying Brushstroke said. To have God Ye Xiu as an opponent, it was nice knowing you, Chilling Nightfall said. We've got nothing else to do, so we'll be going back first, Dawn of Ice said. Yeah, you guys can go back. Changing Spring answered. Moonlight Forest hasn't been run yet, right? Not yet. Okay, we'll run it tonight. Should we go now? Let's go. Blue Bridge, good luck. Remember to pay attention to Lord Grimm's weapon, Changing Spring urged. FCK, you guys. Blue River hadn't finished when the 4 went offline one after another. These guys are too irresponsible. Blue Bridge was speechless. As soon as these guys saw that the 10th server's difficult problem was because of God Ye Xiu, they all acted as if there was nothing wrong and all ran off. Bound Boat could only force a smile. "What do you think we should do?" Blue River asked. "Actually, the guild leaders already told us what we can do," Bound Boat said. "Oh, knowing Lord Grimm's identity is the one thing we can use," Bound Boat said. "Why do I think that all that gives us is more pressure?" Blue River said. "Pressure can be used. Other guilds might not have this type of pressure, so they'll still face him directly. As for us, we'll have to be more careful. We won't try this sort of thing anymore. We'll see if we can take advantage of what others do," Bound Boat said. "Whoa, if you say it like this. Then you're saying we should run away from battles against God Ye Xiu and sit back and watch God Ye Xiu clean up these other arrogant guys?" Blue River said. "I think that's what the guild leader was saying," Bound Boat said. "That's the only thing that can be done." Blue River thought. "Was that an advantage? It sounds like we are killing the other guilds with a borrowed knife. But in reality, the knife did whatever it wanted to, and we can only follow it with our tail tucked between our legs and pick up the leftovers. Next up is Line Canyon. What do you think tyrannical ambition will do?" Bound Boat said, but he didn't hear Blue River respond. Are you there?" Bound Boat asked. "I say," Blue River was still here. "What? If I go ask Lord Grimm for a signature, would that be bad? FCK, what a loser. Even though he's God Ye Xiu, he's also a difficult opponent for us," Bound Boat said. "Yeah, that's what I think too. It's too shameful," Blue River said. Bound Boat was speechless. The King's Avatar, Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 185, Chapter 185. It's unfortunate that his hands are handicapped. Lord Grimm was Ye Xiu. The tremors brought by this were minimal. Blue River and Bound Boat were the only two who knew of this in the 10th server's Blue Brook Guild. After discussing it, the two decided to keep this a secret. The guilds who didn't know this would continue fighting against Lord Grimm. Standing on the sidelines and watching them strike at a stone with eggs, what was wrong with that? Blue River stopped playing and instead went to the forums to enjoy the videos of Poplar Beach getting destroyed. Poplar Beach's name was very distinct. Even though Poplar Beach always made Blue River resentful, Poplar Beach was, after all, a relatively famous player in the game and was one of their Blue Brook Guild's experts. Being crushed like this didn't only embarrass himself, but the Blue Brook Guild as well. The players from the enemy guilds would surely use this to laugh at Blue Brook Guild. The reason Blue River was on the forums was because this video had been posted on one of the categories in the forum, Heavenly Domain. There was a heavenly domain in the game. There was a heavenly domain in the forums. These two heavenly domains were both places bustling with noise. These heavenly domain people clearly didn't harbor any good intentions. In the comments, they praised the exceptional skill of chasing haze on the surface, but their main way of doing so was by using Poplar Beach as the center. Does everyone know who Poplar Beach is? He's an expert who's not any weaker than Blue Brook Guild's 5 great experts. But to have been beaten like this by chasing haze, how skilled do you think this chasing haze is? This was more or less the method they used. Blue River looked at the later comments. These people's plots had succeeded. There were many who were looking down and laughing at Poplar Beach. Speaking of this, it was mostly because Poplar Beach's reputation wasn't good. He had made a name for himself in the heavenly domain through his arrogance. His fall caused many players to attack him like a dead dog. Many of these attacks brought Blue Brook Guild along with him, which made Blue River extremely unhappy. This video had already exploded into popularity. Those in the heavenly domain and the other servers who didn't understand the dispute in the 10th server had already found chasing haze in game. That day at dinner, Chen Guo scolded Ye Xiu for quite a lengthy amount of time. She practically couldn't play the game anymore. Her in-game friends were all asking her how she suddenly become so good. She was only able to explain it to them one by one, which was already annoying enough. But her friends continued to bother her by asking which expert had borrowed the account. Besides this, there were also numerous strangers who asked her to mentor them. There were random guilds pestering her to join their guilds too. Even weirder was that in the afternoon, there were two people who claimed they were pro-player scouts. They asked her as if she were under an interrogation how old she was, how long she had played Glory, where she was from, and whether she had any interest in becoming a pro player. This made Chen Guo so angry that she returned with an "I'm not the account's owner" and then logged out of the game. Thinking about how she had actually said, "I'm not the account's owner," Chen Guo felt sad. "It's all because of you," Chen Guo shouted. The rice in her mouth almost sprayed onto Ye Xiu's face. My bad, boss, you should drink some soup. Don't choke." Ye Xiu immediately handed a bowl of soup over to Chen Guo. Chen Guo took it and drank 2 sips. Her anger receded a bit. "Actually, you can't completely blame this on me." Ye Xiu took the opportunity to explain. The opponent was too weak. Get the FCK out of here." Chen Guo's soup splashed. Amongst everyone's cries of fear, Ye Xiu swiftly slipped out of the internet cafe. "And you're laughing, little Tang," Chen Guo said angrily. Tang Ru ate her dinner behind the reception desk. As of right now, she was carrying her lunch box. Even though her back was facing Chen Guo, her shoulders were moving up and down. She was clearly laughing uncontrollably. "I'm not laughing." Tang Ru quickly stuffed rice into her mouth to try and stifle her laughter. Ye Xiu had run out but hadn't come back. At 9 o'clock, Chen Guo ran out of the internet cafe to look around but didn't see him coming back, so she returned and muttered to Tang Ru. "Where'd he run off to? Could he have crashed into a tree?" "If that happened, then I'm sure you'd be happy," Tang Ru said. "Yeah, I'd be really happy," Chen Guo said as she continued to glance outside repeatedly. "What are you doing?" Seeing that Tang Ru wasn't busy at the front desk, she stretched her neck to look inside and saw Tang Ru studying a guide again. Chen Guo was helpless. "Should I go find a random open computer and play? I tried it before, but it was still so noisy. Maybe I should go look at a guide or watch a video." Chen Guo opened up a web page and saw that the lead story was a video and analysis of Poplar Beach getting crushed by chasing haze. Chen Guo couldn't resist clicking on it and playing it over and over again. The time was nearing 11, but there was still no sign of Ye Xiu. "Where'd this guy go? He doesn't have a phone either." Chen Guo went in and out of the cafe. "Relax, he's an adult," Tang Ru said. "A shut-in. He probably ran far away and got lost," Chen Guo said. "Even if he's lost, there's still the police. Don't worry about him," Tang Ru said. "Who's worrying about him? It's almost 11 o'clock already. If he doesn't come back soon, then what about the night shift?" Chen Guo said. "Aren't I still here?" Tang Ru said. "You should go to sleep." "Okay." Chen Guo looked outside once again but finally went up the stairs. "If he comes back, should I send you a text?" Tang Ru asked. "Okay," Chen Guo answered and went up. Not long after Chen Guo left, the employees who got off at 11 all left. At this moment, Ye Xiu appeared at the entrance of the internet cafe like a ghost. After looking inside, he creeped up to the reception desk. Once he saw that only Tang Ru was there, he relaxed. "Where's the boss?" Ye Xiu stood straight and lit up a cigarette. "She went to sleep." When Tang Ru saw Ye Xiu, after answering him, she took out her cell phone. "Where'd you run off to?" Tang Ru asked Ye Xiu as she sent a text to Chen Guo. "I just took a stroll around the area. Out of 100, how many points is boss's anger worth now?" Ye Xiu asked. "Hard to say. When you weren't here, she was at a 0, but now that you're here, she's probably at a 100 again," Tang Ru said. "It really wasn't my fault," Ye Xiu said. "But you're such a taunter," Tang Ru said. This sister had already begun using a few gaming terms in real life. After typing out the text, she pressed send. Her phone quickly rang. Tang Ru opened it and chuckled. "Boss said that you were late, so there won't be any pay for today." Tang Ru showed Ye Xiu the text. "Fine, it doesn't matter if I don't get pay as long as I have food and shelter," Ye Xiu said. "Should I reply with what you said?" Tang Ru asked. "Don't you dare." Ye Xiu was speechless. Ha ha, you should come in, I'm going over there. Tang Ru got up and gave her seat at the front desk to Ye Xiu. She went to her usual all-nighter seat. The two logged into the game. Just as Ye Xiu logged into Lord Grimm, he received a message, "You've been exposed." Ye Xiu was puzzled. He replied, "Who are you?" "FCK, FCK, 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 it's me, Xiaoshan." Huang Xiaoshan was sad. "Oh, it's you." Ye Xiu thought of Flowing Tree, that low-leveled account that Huang Xiaoshan had used. "What's been exposed?" Ye Xiu asked. "Your records were too astonishing. Blue Brook Guild even came by today to look for the team for help. I'm sure you know how amazing our team captain is." In just a few moments he deduced that you were Lord Grimm. Huang Xiaoshan replied. "Oh, how'd he deduce it?" Ye Xiu asked. The process would clearly take a long time, but who was Huang Xiaoshan? He could be afraid of anything else, but he wasn't afraid of talking too much. His hands moved swiftly as he quickly narrated the entire process to Ye Xiu. "Oh, so it was like that. But if I've been exposed, there's nowhere for you to hide either," Ye Xiu said. "Yeah, he also deduced that I was Flowing Tree," Huang Xiaoshan said. Tusk, when Zhou really is quite amazing. It's just too bad that his hand is handicapped," Ye Xiu said. "He's standing right behind me," Huang Xiaoshan replied. "Then his hand isn't handicapped," Ye Xiu said. "Captain," Huang Xiaoshan turned his head to look at Yu Wenzhou with an innocent expression. Yu Wenzhou only laughed. "It's the truth. My hands really are handicapped." "Your trash talk has no effect on our team captain," Huang Xiaoshan replied. "Yeah, that's why I said he's amazing. If his hands weren't handicapped, then he really would be an extremely difficult opponent to deal with," Ye Xiu said. Huang Xiaoshan was helpless and turned his head to Yu Wenzhou. "The handicapped person would like to compare notes with him. Ask him if he wants to come." Yu Wenzhou laughed. Huang Xiaoshan conveyed the message. Ye Xiu quickly replied, "Come. Count. I'll just use this one." After a short moment the reply came. "Oh, you've already switched?" Ye Xiu asked. "Yeah, free field, whoever gets there first makes the room," Ye Xiu said. "Room 45,178, password 159, Yu Wenzhou replied. "How long have you been waiting?" Ye Xiu replied. His Lord Grimm hastily rushed towards the arena. "Enter, ready, begin." The map was the most common small ring. Flowing Tree stood at one corner. "Hi." After Lord Grimm entered, Ye Xiu greeted. "Hi, I heard you're a manager at an internet cafe now," Yu Wenzhou replied. The character Flowing Tree drew his sword and rushed forward. "Yeah, for people like us, besides playing games, what else can we do?" Ye Xiu laughed. Lord Grimm also swung his 1,000-chance umbrella. The umbrella transformed into the battle lance form. After dodging the attack, he stabbed forward with his lance. A battle lance with an attack speed of 5, how difficult to deal with. "Even your evil annihilation didn't have that high of an attack speed, right?" Yu Wenzhou said. "It's just plain stats." Ye Xiu's hands hadn't stopped. He followed up with a few skills as well as a few normal attacks. Yu Wenzhou's Flowing Tree dodged left and right. There wasn't any chance for him to counter-attack. "Are you preparing to return with an unspecialized?" Yu Wenzhou was still talking. "I hope this time the company won't mess things up," Ye Xiu said. "Ha ha, good luck. I need luck to beat you." Ye Xiu laughed. "Sometimes I really admire you guys with your crazy hand speeds." Yu Wenzhou regretted. Because his Flowing Tree wasn't able to keep up, he was finally hit under Lord Grimm's relentless attacks. If you also had this type of hand speed, how could there be any contest? Ye Xiu wasn't polite, though, and continued to attack the King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 186, Chapter 186. An unspecialized character's false combos when comboing. The numerous skills an unspecialized possessed was a huge advantage. No other class had so many short cooldown skills. Of course, this also meant that using them was more complicated. In order to do the same amount of damage as a single high-leveled skill did, unspecialized characters would need to chain several skills. Moreover, There couldn't be any mistakes. Unspecialized characters were actually quite a difficult class. However, to Ye Xiu, who had played Glory for 10 years, his mechanics were as precise as a machine. His opponent Yu Wenzhou was also an absolute expert in the professional scene though. To be comboed until death, that was something that would only happen to someone like Tang Ru and Poplar Beach. Even under the relentless attacks, Yu Wenzhou was able to find an opportunity. With a swing, a cold light flashed and Flowing Tree used sword draw. The sword aura flew in an arc towards Lord Grimm. Lord Grimm's 1000-chance umbrella shook, and a dragon tooth thrust forward at Flowing Tree. 2 blood blossoms flew out into the air at the same time. Flowing Tree had been hit by Dragon Tooth. Lord Grimm had been cut by Sword Draw. Characters that were hit by Dragon Tooth would be briefly stunned. Characters that were cut by Sword Draw would fly backwards. However, while flying back, Lord Grimm's 1000-chance umbrella transformed into a gun form. A burst of flame shot out from the tip of his umbrella and anti-tank missiles shot out. The 3 anti-tank missiles exploded into a blazing flame, burning Flowing Tree from top to bottom. Lord Grimm used quick recover as he landed on the ground. He flipped over and stood up. His hands continued to fire, attacking from afar. Even though Flowing Tree's sword draw had done damage to Lord Grimm, it hadn't interrupted Ye Xiu's offense. The situation didn't change much. Yu Wenzhou had been able to find an opportunity several times, but he had no way of taking back the initiative. Ye Xiu had been able to adjust to Yu Wenzhou's counter-attacks every time, quickly changing his path and staying on the offensive. The constantly changing combos didn't seem to go on for very long, but the control and pressure put on by them couldn't be ignored. Moreover, many attacks were hit in quick succession. However, these attacks weren't considered as combos by the system, so they didn't count towards the total. These attacks may not have been counted towards the combo by the system, but in actual battle, they could be used to chain attacks, which was why players called them false combos. It was possible to avoid false combos, but players couldn't play perfectly, so they would sometimes fail to dodge these attacks for various reasons. TLC. Combos are strings of attacks that cannot be dodged or blocked if the first hit connects. False combos are similar to combos, except they can be dodged or blocked, so they are technically not true combos and thus aren't counted by the system. In this match, even though Yu Wenzhou wasn't completely powerless like Tang Ru or Poplar Beach were, he was still struggling. But even in this situation, the two were still doing 2 things at once, fighting while chatting. If a normal player was watching on the side, he definitely wouldn't believe that it was possible to chat with such liveliness in such a high-skill fight. In the end, the launched Flowing Tree was hit by a falling flower palm and then a sword draw. The last sliver of health fell and Yu Wenzhou lost in the end. "You won," Yu Wenzhou said. "Very normal," Ye Xiu laughed. "The advantages of an unspecialized really are clear. Plus, you have that mysterious weapon. However, the higher the levels, the weaker they become." Yu Wenzhou said. "Yeah, what do you think the limit is?" Ye Xiu asked. "To be honest, I don't think there's any point discussing unspecialized characters. There are too many difficult requirements that have to be met in order to play them well. First of all, without that weapon in your hand, there's no way you'd be so oppressive. Next, only you can fully utilize the advantages of an unspecialized. For this specific class, there's only meaning if these conditions can be satisfied," Yu Wenzhou said. "Right now, they're all satisfied," Ye Xiu said. "With all of the conditions you've met, I think that at level 70 the advantages of an unspecialized will still be greater than the lack of high damage and high-level skills. Remember, this is only if you have a weapon like yours. But let's say that Glory raises the level cap from level 70, level 95. The limit is level 95. At that level, even if it's you, unspecialized won't have any value." Yu Wenzhou said. Whoa, you thought the same as me. How unfortunate, Ye Xiu sighed. If this was a bit earlier and you caught up with the level 50 era, then your unspecialized would be extremely strong. It would have been considered a bug. Yu Wenzhou said. Right now it's not too late yet, Ye Xiu said. However, after this season, Glory won't have raised the level cap in 3 years. Yu Wenzhou said. Yeah, it might be soon, Ye Xiu said. Level 75, level 80. Unspecialized will grow weaker as the other classes gain more skills, Yu Wenzhou said. But it'll at least be in the acceptable range. Do you think I'll still be able to play until the day the level cap reaches level 95? Ye Xiu said. If you only play like this in the 10th server, what isn't possible? Yu Wenzhou laughed. Ha, you're right, Ye Xiu also laughed. Another round? Yu Wenzhou asked. No need, I won't let you see my strength clearly, Ye Xiu said. Did you not use your full strength? Yu Wenzhou asked. Of course I'm old, I need to take care of myself, Ye Xiu said. Then I guess that's it. Yu Wenzhou chuckled and then left the field. After the two characters bumped into each other again outside of the arena, Ye Xiu said bye and then left. What do you think? Yu Wenzhou turned his head to ask Huang Xiaoshan. He did a total of 21 false combos, Huang Xiaoshan said. He really knows what my weaknesses are, Yu Wenzhou said. Hand speed. This was Yu Wenzhou's fatal weakness. As a result, in this type of fight, his hand speed was incapable of keeping up with his opponent's movements. His character would move too slowly, making it so that attacks that could have been avoided weren't, which in the end became false combos. Yeah. Huang Xiaoshan nodded his head and then said, he knows all the weakness of all his opponents in the alliance. If I was his opponent, then he wouldn't have used so many false combos. If he wasn't an unspecialized, he also wouldn't be able to put out so many false combos. Yu Wenzhou said, if you had been playing under the same circumstances, then how many of those 21 false combos would you have been able to dodge? Huang Xiaoshan stared blankly. You should look at the recordings again. Yu Wenzhou got up and patted Huang Xiaoshan. The unspecialized character's unpredictable and complex style creates these constant false combos. After Yu Wenzhou left, Huang Xiaoshan returned to in front of his computer. He logged out of the game and opened up the recording app, bringing up the recording of the fight with Yu Wenzhou versus Ye Xiu. 21 false combos, how many could he have dodged? When he was watching the fight, Huang Xiaoshan really hadn't considered this issue. The two had been fighting very quickly, so Huang Xiaoshan didn't have time to think of that. Now that he had looked at the recording, Huang Xiaoshan played it again, except this time, he imagined that he was the one playing against Ye Xiu. If it was him, it would have turned differently here. First, he noticed the difference in hand speed. There were a few places that he could have done better, even though he probably wouldn't have been able to win against the enormous advantage of an unspecialized. He could have at least played more beautifully than Yu Wenzhou. But these 21 false combos, after counting them out one by one, Huang Xiaoshan began to sweat. 21 false combos. If he were the one playing, it might not have played out like that. However, when he imagined himself playing, Huang Xiaoshan discovered that of these 21 false combos, he would have only been able to dodge 4 of them. 4. This was something Huang Xiaoshan hadn't expected. The difference between his hand speed and Yu Wenzhou's was quite large. Huang Xiaoshan had originally thought that these false combos sent to Yu Wenzhou were done to bully him, but he now discovered that these 21 false combos wasn't as simple as taking advantage of Yu Wenzhou's weakness. Huang Xiaoshan recovered and played the recording again. FCK. After watching it again, Huang Xiaoshan couldn't help but curse. 3 times. The number of false combos he could have dodged was actually 3. He had made an oversight on one of them. That false combo looked easy to dodge from a spectator's perspective, but in the actual battle, Lord Grimm had attacked from Flowing Tree's dead angle. That attack was a sneak attack with a 100% chance of succeeding. Even if it hadn't hit, The many attacks after it would definitely have hit out a false combo. For someone so perceptive as him to have made an oversight, that only showed how sneaky and hidden that attack was. It was just that against someone with such a weakness in hand speed like Yu Wenzhou, there was no need to use such a complicated attack. How many of these tricks was this guy hiding? Huang Xiaoshan, though. A cold chill went down his spine. He once again studied Lord Grimm's fighting style. He wanted to carefully analyze how many hidden attacks were made. Soon after, he discovered another terrifying reality. Even for a god-level character like him, he truly lacked too much experience towards these false combos done by Lord Grimm. Falling flower palm followed by a sword draw. In a one-on-one match, he had never seen such a combo before. Lord Grimm's numerous combos and false combos, these sort of chaining attacks, could be considered as coordination. The coordination done by several classes was being done by a single character. The more Huang Xiaoshan thought, the stronger this feeling. Flowing Tree's opponent wasn't a single person, but rather 2, 3, or perhaps even more, but it couldn't be seen in this match because the opponent hadn't used his full strength. If he had gone all out, what would the result be? Huang Xiaoshan was very curious about this question, so he quickly logged into the game The King's Avatar Volume 3 A Stormy Situation Chapter 187 Chapter 187. Can't find a chance in the heavenly domain. A very common friend notification rang. However, after looking at the name, many players immediately grew excited. Troubling Rain. The character who had come online was impressively Troubling Rain, a god-like character known as the Sword Saint. No matter how amazing an account was, it came from the game. This was why accounts in the game as well as accounts in the Alliance could be searched, for characters that were liked, who knew how many players asked to be their friend. Some characters directly refused them, while some required them to identify themselves, and a select few directly added them. Unless the character was the type to directly refuse them, it wasn't impossible to add a pro-god as a friend. In the game, the number of players who were Troubling Rain's friends weren't few, so when his name popped up, many players immediately took note of it. Quite a few bravely sent their greetings to the god. Oops, I forgot to hide myself. The continuous message prompts made Huang Xiaoshan's eyes go blurry, so he hastily logged out. Because of his special status, his short-lived appearance instantly brought a lot of attention. Troubling Rain had gone online. This news was already being discussed in the World Channel. A pro player's character was being played in-game. This type of occurrence wasn't anything new. In the Heavenly Domains arena, pro players would frequently play a few rounds. Many normal players had the experience of playing against a pro-level player. However, god-level characters like Troubling Rain truly hadn't appeared in the arena for a long time. Pro players didn't use the in-game arena for practice. The game company specially provided them with an environment with which to play in. Apart from this, they also had map editors, setting editors. They could design their own maps with which to practice certain things. The game. These types of top-tier accounts rarely appeared in the game. While the players were talking about Troubling Rain in the World Channel, Huang Xiaoshan quietly logged into the game, making himself invisible to his friends. Even though many still sent messages, Huang Xiaoshan calmly acted like he wasn't there. But the name on top of his head couldn't be hidden, and the name Troubling Rain still was capable of causing a lot of wide eyes. So he went to a small town in a normal server after leaving the heavenly domain to be away from the prying eyes. His journey through could have been considered as smooth. Huang Xiaoshan entered the small town and went directly to the arena. He set up a room in the fixed field. But he began to sweat after opening his friends list. Troubling Rain and Lord Grimm weren't in the same server. Lord Grimm wasn't in the heavenly domain either, so he couldn't add him as a friend. Helpless, He could only Alt-Tab out of the game and open up QQ. He didn't care whether Ye Xiu really wasn't on there or if he was faking it and sent him a few messages. However, there was no response. Just as Huang Xiaoshan was feeling helpless, he suddenly discovered that Sima Cheng was on, so he immediately sent her a message. Through this, he was finally able to connect to Ye Xiu. Huang Xiaoshan waited bitterly for a long time. Sima Cheng finally returned with a reply. He won't be playing, he doesn't have time, he's about to go dungeon. Dungeon? Which dungeon? Huang Xiaoshan asked. He'll probably go to Line Canyon first, Sima Cheng said. FCK. Huang Xiaoshan felt depressed. What status did he have? How could he be less important than a stupid dungeon like Line Canyon? Fine. Huang Xiaoshan had no choice but to admit defeat. To be able to fight with an expert like him, such an opportunity would be extremely hard to come by for a normal player, but to Ye Xiu, this wasn't anything special. Ask him to come fight with me. I'm using my main account. My main account. I've opened a fixed field, so I won't be bullying him. Let me see how strong this unspecialized is. Huang Xiaoshan chattered, but Sima Cheng automatically replied. In the middle of a dungeon. Hey. In the middle of a dungeon. Sima Cheng, you have no future. You talk in the same way as him. You only need to pass on what I'm saying to him. Did you pass what I said to him? Huang Xiaoshan quickly typed out. In the middle of a dungeon. Hey. I do what I want to do, it's none of your business. Sima Cheng had clearly been looking at the chat and suddenly replied to Huang Xiaoshan's taunts. No future, same. Huang Xiaoshan's words didn't make her mad, but they rather suited her quite well. Huang Xiaoshan continued to roar, completely displaying his talkative personality. Unfortunately, they couldn't move Sima Cheng, and all he received were in the middle of a dungeon. Automatic replies. Helpless, Huang Xiaoshan got off his troubling rein and went on to Flowing Tree. This account had Lord Grimm as his friend, so as soon as he got on he spammed, hey. What? Ye Xiu calmly replied. PK, Huang Xiaoshan shouted. I'm in a dungeon, Ye Xiu said. What dungeon? If you still have any pro sense in you, how could running a dungeon be something you should be doing? Hurry up and come to the arena. You need a high-skilled opponent to help you maintain your condition, Huang Xiaoshan said. In the middle of a dungeon. You two are so shameful. Huang Xiaoshan almost flipped the table. He wasn't easily irritated on stage. But in private he was more carefree, so there was no need to control his emotions. I'm in a dungeon right now. Wait until I'm free, Ye Xiu said. Huang Xiaoshan was helpless. He could only go offline and watch the recording again. In-game, Ye Xiu and the others really were dungeoning. Line Canyon was a dungeon record they could already try and challenge. This dungeon was a level 30-33-1. There wasn't any large 5-level equipment or skill difference, so the levels weren't as significant. It was similar to that times level 25 versus level 27 run at Boneyard. Ye Xiu's 5-man team had good equipment, and after the addition of Cairo Yifen, they no longer had any weaknesses. They completely had the ability to contest with the elite teams of the big guilds. And this time, after Blue Brook Guild's Blue River found out who Lord Grimm was, he had already prepared a deal. Now, they were figuring out how to conduct the negotiation. In this dungeon record, the guild who was in the most troublesome position was Tyrannical Ambition. Blue Brook Guild was their warning. Blue Brook Guild had tried to compete against Lord Grimm for the record, but were stepped on in the end. There didn't seem to be any hopes in turning that over. Blue Brook Guild's carefully established power had fallen, and for now, they had no way of climbing back up. And for Tyrannical Ambition, the effects from the previous blow to them still remained. The number of players who were applying to their guild was declining, but they still had a chance. Line Canyon was the place where they could prove themselves. But Lord Grimm, how were they going to deal with this huge mountain? After witnessing Blue Brook Guild's miserable state, Tyrannical Ambition's guild leader, Jiang Yu, decided to bravely go to the club for help as well. But when he got to the practice room, he happened to come at a time when the team captain Han Wenqing was reprimanding the team members. Besides his criticizing shouts in the practice room, there were no other sounds. No one dared to speak out. How could Jiang Yu dare to go up? Jiang Yu had waited for the session to end before cautiously moving forward. But once he saw Han Wenqing's strict glare, Jiang Yu's mustered-up courage suddenly disappeared. He pretended like he was just passing by and slipped away. No good. Even if he went to the club to ask the experts for help, he couldn't go directly to the captain, Han Wenqing. It'd be better to go look for the vice-captain Zhang Xinji. After pacing back and forth outside of the practice room, he finally decided on this. Zhang Xinji was also a famous player in the alliance. As Tyranny's vice-captain, he definitely wasn't first a bad cop and then a good cop type of guy like Han Wenqing. Zhang Xinji was solemn, strict, and precise. He was the current record holder in the alliance for the least number of mistakes on average in a match. Zhang Xinji was publicly recognized as more outstanding than any other god-level character in this area, showing just how serious his style was. For a serious person like him, Jiang Yu believed that he would have an appropriate solution. At least, he wouldn't be like Han Wenqing and start shouting at him. Zhang Xinji was serious, while Han Wenqing was stubborn. Jiang Yu left first and prepared to look for a chance. In short, after looking at what happened to Blue Brook Guild, he knew only using their in-game experts wouldn't be good enough. Jiang Yu completely recognized this. In-game, the first-string teams in the big guilds were already level 33. They were currently looking to set the final record for Line Canyon. Even though they knew about the large mountain that was Lord Grimm, they also knew that they still had the chance to set a record before the limit was reached. Even if the record wouldn't last until the very end, they could still appear on TV and earn experience as well as purple equipment rewards. Today, Line Canyon's record had been made with a time of 30:41:12. Afterwards, it hadn't been broken. But right now, the 10th server were mostly paying attention to that match between Poplar Beach and Chasing Haze. Not many people noticed this dungeon besides the big guilds. Jiang Yu put this record in his eyes. If he had experts from the heavenly domain come, then they'd definitely be able to break it. But what about Lord Grimm's team? Where was their limit? What were they doing now? At midnight, when the dungeon entries refreshed, Jiang Yu quietly pondered the King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 188. Chapter 188. Difficult to say, information from Line Canyon has arrived. Lord Grimm and his team went to Line Canyon. That 1-inch ash who set the record with them at Desolate Land the other day is there as well. After Cold Knight received the info, he sent it over to guild leader Jiang Yu. Jiang Yu logged into the elementalist crowd lover he used last time and began directing work in the 10th server. In the afternoon, Jiang Yu went to the club but didn't get anything done. When he returned, he said he saw Han Wenqing and was too afraid to talk. Cold Knight understood him well, extremely well. He had also had the opportunity to see Han Wenqing with his own eyes. He truly was a person who made your heart chill. If he had been taking a night stroll and ran into him, the other side wouldn't even have to say anything and he'd give him his wallet. The current record isn't the limit. If any big guild had their elite experts go all out, then they'd all be able to reach the limit. But looking at the previous records, Lord Grimm's team clearly has the ability to exceed this limit. Although they aren't yet level 33 with their skill, they should already be able to compete with us. Jiang Yu analyzed. Yeah, Cold Knight agreed with this analysis. If they set an extremely fast record right now, then things would be difficult for us. We'd have no way of taking back the record and it would be too late to negotiate with them. From now on, I don't think any guild will ask them to substitute in. We won't, but that might not be true for other guilds. This is the most difficult part. Jiang Yu laughed bitterly. Others, Cold Knight doubted. Our guild needs the dungeon records to show our strength, but some other guilds might not. And for Lord Grimm, there's no difference between earning items from them or us. But other than our big guilds, who else is able to pay his price? Cold Knight said. 4 scarlet moon parts. Do you still not understand? Jiang Yu said. Jiang Yu understood. Lord Grimm was willing to set the price at 4 scarlet moon parts. What did that mean? It meant that Lord Grimm's price depended on the buyer. Big guilds might not feel like it was fair, but they had no choice. The initiative was all on the other side's hands. Being bought with 4 scarlet moon parts by Full Moon Guild was a show of his attitude. Would you like me to contact him so we can discuss the records? Cold Knight said. Oh, what are you planning on saying? Jiang Yu asked. We're still thinking about the conditions and we hope he'll stay put for now, Cold Knight said. HM, you can try it. Let's see if we can let him drag things out. Jiang Yu said. At this moment Cold Knight suddenly cried out in astonishment. What is it? I received a message. Cold Knight said. What message? From Lord Grimm? No, from Excellent Dynasty. Cold Knight said. Excellent Dynasty, what they say? Jiang Yu was surprised. They want to talk with us face to face. Cold Knight said. Jiang Yu furrowed his brows. Looking at the two guilds' backgrounds, Excellent Dynasty and Tyrannical Ambition were absolute enemies. This enmity was even greater than the enmity between Tiny Herb and Blue Rain. Tiny Herb's and Blue Rain's enmity started from Season 6 playoffs, when Team Blue Rain defeated Team Tiny Herb, while their Tyrannical Ambition and Excellent Dynasty's enmity originated long before that. The two teams were both old brands in glory. They had both fought against each other to be champions ever since the first season. Their rivalry began there. Excellent Era had won the championships 3 years in a row, but in the 4th season they were finally dethroned by Tyranny. From then on, Excellent Era began going downhill year after year. Tyranny, on the other hand, continued to maintain their strength. However, they hadn't been able to win their 2nd championship yet. For this reason, both sides taunted each other. From the club's fans to the media, from the matches on stage to those underneath, their relationship was much tenser than Tiny Herb's and Blue Rain's. Herb Garden's Plantago Seed and Blue Brook Guild's Blue River could still add each other as friends and chat with one another. But such a relationship would be very difficult for Tyrannical Ambition and Excellent Dynasty. The reason Cold Knight was able to receive the message was because the other side had temporarily added him as a friend. Excellent Dynasty is looking for us. It's probably related to Lord Grimm, Jiang Yu said. In fact, Excellent Dynasty was the first to begin fighting with Lord Grimm, Cold Knight said. Their Tyrannical Ambition hadn't been in conflict with Lord Grimm yet. As for Excellent Dynasty, they had engaged in a large battle against Lord Grimm for Frost Forest and Boneyard. From the records, each side had won one battle, but it seemed like Lord Grimm had lasted the longest. Everyone had originally been looking forward to seeing Excellent Dynasty act out again, but after being stepped on in Boneyard, there was no other movement from them. We can go and see them. When? Now, Jiang Yu asked. He didn't say the time, Cold Knight said. Then schedule it now, face to face. Writing method, Jiang Yu said. Writing method meant that even though the two were face to face, they would still type out messages to communicate. Usually when both sides conducted important meetings, they would use this type of method. The content they typed out would appear above their characters' heads. If the meeting was being recorded, then these could be used as proof. The other side wants to talk first, Cold Knight replied. No problem, let's go and take a look, Jiang Yu answered. What about Lord Grimm? Cold Knight asked. Try to contact him and ask. Jiang Yu thought for a while and then spoke. Okay, Cold Knight replied. He had his character move forward and sent a message. Brother, yeah. That, are you able to set a record for Line Canyon tonight? Cold Knight asked. Hard to say, Ye Xiu replied. This answer made Cold Knight surprised. Even if Ye Xiu wasn't going to set the record, he had expected him to bluff and give them pressure. What type of answer was that? What difficulties do you have? Cold Knight asked. We met a hidden, Ye Xiu said. Tears streamed down Cold Knight's cheeks. Hidden boss. When Ye Xiu's group entered Line Canyon, they received a system notification. Steamed Bun Invasion cried out in joy. In their team, Ye Xiu, Sima Cheng and Kaio Yifan were all pro players, so nothing in a little dungeon would surprise them. Tang Ru wasn't only a new player in Glory, but a new gamer too, so she still didn't know what was valuable in games. Only Steamed Bun Invasion was both a noob in Glory and an experienced gamer, so he was quite happy about anything valuable in Glory. If not, then why would he bravely gather a bunch of strangers at around level 20 to fight for the Blood Gunner? This was why at this moment, seeing this hidden boss, only Steamed Bun Invasion expressed his excitement. So we finally meet one. Ye Xiu also followed. Their recent fights with the guilds over the records had gone smoothly, but they weren't so lucky in other areas. Especially for hidden bosses, they hadn't met one in a few days. Illusion Swordmaster Ahang. Tang Ru looked at the system announcement and read out the hidden boss's name. The most difficult boss in this dungeon, Ye Xiu said. What features does he have? Tang Ru asked. Did you not look at the guide? Ye Xiu asked. I haven't, Tang Ru said bluntly. When she watched the videos in the guides, she never looked at the dungeons. Her research was focused on PvP. She wasn't too interested in PvE. Author note, PvP is player versus player battles. PvE is fighting with monsters, dungeoning, completing missions, etc. The Illusion Sword Master class is a combination of the Berserker and the Blade Master class, so every skill he possesses comes from those two classes. I don't think there's anything more that needs to be said. Pay close attention to his left-handed blade. Ye Xiu said. Left-handed blade. Yeah, this boss is right-handed, but he also has a short blade at his waist side. While attacking, he might suddenly use his left hand to draw the short blade to perform a sneak attack. This type of attack is called a left-handed blade. There are many different ways he can attack with this. Any of his skills can be used through his left-handed blade, so everyone pay attention, Ye Xiu said. When Ye Xiu said everyone, he was actually only talking about Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion. Sima Cheng and Kaio Yifan didn't need any warning. Line Canyon's dungeon terrain was that of a canyon. There were two large cliffs on either side, so players could only move forward. The monsters were similar to those in the leveling area. However, they were elite types, so they did more damage and had more health. This illusionary swordsman Ahang's background was described as someone who was hiding out in Line Canyon to escape pursuit. As a result, he treated anyone who intruded into the canyon as enemies. This was what the game described him as. Of course, even if he didn't actively come and kill players, the players wouldn't let him go. In general, female players liked the story plot, but Sima Cheng was an old player at Glory, and she had finished the plot enough times to make her want to puke seeing it. Tang Ru wasn't very interested in the game itself. How could she care about any stories about some NPC? She would compare herself to Ye Xiu every day to see whether she had improved, how much she had improved, and how much longer until she could crush the guy. They slaughtered their way through the dungeon with Ye Xiu reminding them the tactics from time to time. The Illusion Swordmaster Ahang didn't have a fixed spawn point and could appear at any moment. Sure enough, after clearing a mob of monsters at an intersection, a red-clothed swordsman hurried forward from the intersection. After seeing the 5 players, he cried out his lines. That was quick. The King's Avatar Volume 3 A Stormy Situation Chapter 189 Chapter 189 Illusion Swordmaster Ahang Illusion Swordmaster Ahang, red-clothed, red-haired with a red sheath. There was even a red scar that ran across his face. His 2 red eyes stared at the 5 players. Pay attention to the Swordmaster's eyes. The redder his eyes, the stronger he'll be. Ye Xiu told the new players. If you want my life, come at me. The Swordmaster was anxious, even more than Steamed Bun Invasion, who was holding a brick in his hands. The swordmaster jumped into the air and his sword whirled a gust of air, starting off with a collapsing mountain. Pay attention. The shockwave from his collapsing mountain will be bigger than usual, Ye Xiu hastily warned. This meant that you would have to jump high enough to dodge the shockwave. The shock wave from normal collapsing mountains could be dodged by jumping over it. But the swordmaster's collapsing mountain was different because the height of the hitbox was different, which was why Ye Xiu had warned them so that Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion wouldn't treat this collapsing mountain as normal. Unfortunately, his warning was a bit too late. Tang Ru reacted too quickly. Before Ye Xiu was able to finish his warning, she had already jumped up into the air to try and avoid it. And as she jumped, she also had her soft mist send a dragon tooth over at the swordsman. Tang Ru was just that type of an aggressive girl. As for Steamed Bun Invasion, he hadn't jumped. When he saw the collapsing mountain arrive, he hastily ran to outside of the shockwave's range and then threw a brick flying over. Steamed Bun Invasion was just that type of a thuggish guy. When she heard Ye Xiu's warning, Tang Ru knew that she was in trouble. She hadn't jumped at full strength. A perfect jump was to not use a single ounce of strength more or less than what was needed. Her jump to avoid what she thought would be a normal collapsing mountain was in an attempt to do this, but unfortunately the swordmaster's attack wasn't normal. The shock wave from the sword slash emitted a faint red glow, as if the slash had created a blood mist. Soft Mist was unable to dodge the shock wave and was hit spiraling into the air. The boss seized this opportunity to follow up in combo. The swordmaster immediately jumped and used the Blade Master skill, Rising Dragon towards Soft Mist. Even though Tang Ru had strong mechanics, she wasn't able to stabilize her camera. All she saw on her screen was the camera spinning round and round. Under this situation, she was unable to perform any precise movements. Tang Ru randomly attacked, not knowing if she was hitting the target or the air. Ye Xiu's Lord Grim rushed forward. He stabbed forward with his lance and threw out a circle swing in order to pull down the illusion swordmaster. However, he was met with the unique skill the illusion swordmaster possessed, left-handed blade. A cold light flashed. It wasn't anything flashy. It was thin, quick, and instantly disappeared. But this blade clashed with Lord Grim's lance and the circle swing was smashed to the side. Bang, bang, bang. 3 gunshots. At the same time, the left-handed blade blocked the circle swing. Cleansing Mist shot anti-tank missiles, hitting the boss. The 3 explosions blew the illusion swordmaster away. But a boss was still a boss, and so the anti-tank missiles that had a strong knockback effect normally was only capable of shaking the illusion swordmaster a little bit. Hence, the Rising Dragon wasn't interrupted and the sword light flashed up, cutting Soft Mist. The spiraling Soft Mist spun even faster. Her body smashed into the cliff. The blood from the cut sprayed down from the air. Soft Mist bounced off the cliff before dropping to the ground. It looked as if she had already been defeated. But the instant she hit the ground, she suddenly turned alive and used a quick recover to stand back up. In game, as long as the player controlling the character didn't lose hope, there was no such thing as being seen as dispirited. The leap of the illusion swordmaster's Rising Dragon was much higher than when the skill was used by players. This was one of the more troublesome reasons about meeting a boss. Even though many of the boss's skills came from the in-game skill trees, the effects were different from the players, and the majority of them had stronger effects than the player's skills. The high-up illusion swordmaster suddenly pointed his sword while descending and used falling light blade directly towards the closest target, Lord Grim. Ye Xiu swiped his keyboard and had Lord Grim step to the side. Not waiting for the falling light blade, he drew out a sword from the Thousand Chance umbrella. A silver light arced into a semicircle. At the same time, a similar arc of light flashed from the opposite side of Lord Grim. The 2 sword lights weaved together, merging into a brilliant moon. The one who acted was Kaiou Yifan, who had moved at the same time as Ye Xiu. They had used the same skill, the Ghost Blade's knock-up skill, Moonlight Slash. "Good," Ye Xiu shouted. The illusion swordmaster's falling light blade was interrupted by these two attacks. The two sword lights slashed across his body in midair, keeping him from falling. Two sword arcs flashed again at the same time, following the same path as the previous moonlight slashes. This time, they slashed in the other direction, creating a perfect circle. Ghostblade level 20 skill, full moonlight slash. This skill had a strong blow-away effect, but because Kaiou Yifan and Ye Xiu were on opposite sides, the two skills counterbalanced each other, keeping the illusion swordmaster in place. The sword lights faded. The moment the illusion swordmaster hit the ground, a laser flew forward, hitting him square in the stomach and caused him to stumble back a few steps. This was Cleansing Mist's laser rifle. Ice Boundary. Kaiou Yifan had already begun casting the spell when Ye Xiu yelled towards him. Frost formed on the tip of his sword. The Ice Soul created a boundary that spread out. Ye Xiu utilized this opportunity to use Sword Soul and created a sword boundary. The wily Steamed Bun Invasion cheered them on as he ran past them and tossed a handful of sand at the illusion swordmaster. Blind. The illusion swordmaster had clearly lost his sense of direction. He couldn't find his opponents and walked around in a circle twice. The ice boundaries effect had been set and ice had begun corroding his body. With a crackle, the freeze effect triggered and the illusion swordmaster turned into a large block of ice. Tang Ru, who had just taken a beating, quickly rushed forward. The instant the swordmaster was frozen, she chained Double Stab, Dragon Tooth, and Falling Flower Palm together, followed by 3 magic chasers that flew out. After the 3 skills hit, the freeze wore off. The illusion swordmaster then used Gore Cross. The Scarlet Cross didn't look like 2 sword lights, rather they looked like 2 blood arcs. The cross flew towards Soft Mist, who immediately leaped back to avoid it. But just as she was about to counterattack, she unexpectedly realized that a smaller Gore Cross was hidden behind the original one. In that instant, Tang Ru saw the left hand of the illusion swordmaster move to his waist and realized that the illusion swordmaster had used his left-handed blade to use a Gore Cross at the same time. A big one to hide the small one. Extremely smart. The unfortunate Tang Ru was directly hit by the small Gore Cross. When she looked down at her body, fresh blood continued to flow from the cross wound formed by the attack. This Gore Cross had caused a bleed to take effect. Her bad luck continued again. The gloomy Tang Ru didn't dare to advance forward for a second time. She immediately used a health potion and retreated. The bleed effect from the illusion swordmaster was very strong. Her health continued to drop even after using the health potion. Tang Ru began to panic. She didn't know how low her health would drop to or how to stop it. "Rest for a bit," Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm said as he rushed forward from beside her to block the illusion swordmaster. Tang Ru immediately relaxed. She believed in Ye Xiu's judgment and knew that she at least wouldn't die. The low-health Tang Ru temporarily became a spectator, while Steamed Bun Invasion continued to act sly. He didn't dare get too close to the swordmaster. Sand Toss and Brick became 2 long-ranged skills, which he used whenever there was a chance to. As a result, the only 2 who were left to face the illusion swordmaster directly were Ye Xiu and Kaiou Yifan. Sima Cheng's launcher naturally couldn't rush forward and fight in close range. Ye Xiu saw everything. A pro player was still a pro player. Whether it was him, Sima Cheng, or Kaiou Yifan, none of them had any trouble dealing with the illusion swordmaster. The reason Tang Ru was half dead was because of an old problem of hers. She lacked experience. As for Steamed Bun Invasion, he was currently wandering outside of the team. The usefulness of this type of performance was quite limited for a team. Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion actually weren't very suited to be team players. Tang Ru was too stubborn and aggressive. Her performance practically revolved with her as the center. Her problem was actually similar to that faced by Sun Xiang in his first match, when he had just joined Excellent Era, stubborn individual performance causing the team to come apart. However, in their current team, there was Ye Xiu, Sima Cheng, and Caio Yifan. Their strength was far greater than Tang Ru's, so they still had enough strength to suppress this problem. However, as Tang Ru became more and more skilled, this problem would be exposed sooner or later. As for Steamed Bun Invasion, this guy was too carefree. He had too much of an individual style. As an individual, he might become a player who was impossible to copy, but as a team player, this type of player wouldn't be able to completely merge because his style was simply too unique. There were predecessors of this type of player. Wang Jixi. Team Tiny Herb's current captain, Wang Jixi. His magician style was the strangest and most graceful style in the alliance. In the individual competition, Wang Jixi had an extremely high win rate, but in the team competition, his individual performance was limited. Assimilating this style into the team was a problem Wang Jixi hadn't been able to resolve. In the end, he made a sacrifice for the team and changed his style to fit in with the team. It was only because of these changes that Team Tiny Herb was able to become champions twice in the past 3 years. The King's Avatar Volume 3. A stormy situation. Thank you for listening to the story on KevinAudio.com Chapter 190. The boss's Shadow Step Steamed Bun Invasion situation was somewhat similar to that of Wang Jixi's. However, Wang Jixi possessed the ability to adjust, while Steamed Bun Invasion probably didn't know how to do so. After all, even Ye Xiu wasn't sure how to help him develop. After Wang Jixi changed, he was still at God level, but if others did the same thing he did, they might fall to a mediocre level. A transformation wasn't something that easy to do. Even though Steamed Bun Invasion was a noob at glory, he wasn't a blank slate in other areas of the game. In reality, he had some understanding of what he was doing. In this area, he wasn't like Tang Ru. Tang Ru truly was a complete blank slate. But it was a pity that this girl's personality was so stubborn. She had pretty much figured out her own style already, and it wasn't possible to create a large transformation. Ye Xiu could help by instructing her about the game's mechanics, but he didn't have the ability to change her personality. Everyone was an adult, so their ways of thinking had matured. Tang Ru's personality wasn't anything bad either. It just stopped her from becoming a good team player, that was all. Ye Xiu pondered over this as he watched the two play. But his playing wasn't slow even though he was multitasking. With 10 years of experience, he had experienced all kinds of battles. Many of the things he needed to do were done automatically without too much thought. Taking the boss down wasn't a problem. They were a team that could defeat a level 36 wild boss. If they couldn't beat a weaker level 33 hidden boss, Illusion Swordmaster Ahang, then they'd be a joke. The important point was that these types of dungeons could be used as practice for everyone. Ye Xiu directed the team as he fought casually. His focus was naturally on Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion. Sima Cheng rarely needed Ye Xiu to say anything. As for Caio Yifan, Ye Xiu hadn't judged him wrong. He was the complete opposite of Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion. His personality and awareness made him an outstanding team player. He was adept at observing. He paid attention to the performance of every team player and tried hard to coordinate with each of them. A part of why Tang Ru's and Steamed Bun Invasion's performances weren't too good was because they were too unfamiliar with the hidden boss. After familiarizing themselves with the Illusion Swordmaster's various skills, the two would gradually assimilate themselves into the team. Correct, they could still assimilate. But as their skills continue to grow, their styles would become more and more unique, and their conflicts within the team would become greater and greater. This was what Ye Xiu was thinking about right now. But as of right now, they were still a good team. Under Ye Xiu's orders, the illusion swordmaster was gradually suppressed as he was hit blow after blow under the cliffs. Lord Grim and 1-inch Ashes, dual-linking ghost boundaries. Never broke Soth team was always in a boundary. Waves of poison arose from steamed bun invasion's attacks. 3 types of magic chasers flew out from soft mist. Explosions erupted from cleansing mist's cannon. They continued to bombard the illusion swordmaster with their skills. Ahang's eyes grew more and more red, his head was covered in sweat, and his expression grew more and more serious. Careful, almost red blood, Ye Xiu suddenly said. What happens when he goes into red blood? Tang Ru immediately asked. In the beginning, she had suffered quite a bit because she didn't know what the boss's features were. Tang Ru had learned from her mistakes. Shadow steps, Ye Xiu said. Oh, what's that? Steamed Bun Invasion asked. He wasn't like Tang Ru in this area. Tang Ru had helped Chen Guo PK a few times before, so she had seen quite a few high-leveled skills. Even though she might not know the name, Shadow Steps had been used in the fight between Poplar Beach and Ye Xiu recently. Chen Guo had even called out the name, so Tang Ru knew what this skill was. But Steamed Bun Invasion had only played on this account, so he didn't know of any skills above level 30. It's an afterimage. There'll be 5 soon, 1 for each of us, Ye Xiu said. If this were a normal team, then they wouldn't dare split the team to fight each afterimage 1-on-1. But Ye Xiu's team was strong, so they dared to fight them directly this way. Careful. Ye Xiu, who had been paying attention to the boss's health the entire time, finally shouted. The illusion swordmaster Ahang's eyes began to glow red. The white of his eyes could no longer be seen. Back! Following Ye Xiu's command, the 5 characters quickly leaped back. The illusion swordmaster roared towards the sky. The red light surrounding his body extravagantly burst outwards. The rocks and grass around him were blown apart and a burst of wind surged down. Fortunately, Ye Xiu's warning had been quick, and the 5 players retreated fast enough to dodge this attack. Next, the illusion swordmaster twirled his sword in a dance-like motion. His figure blurred and split into 5 towards them. What was different from a blade master's shadow step was that the illusion swordmaster's shadow steps didn't have any distinction between real and fake. The 5 were all illusion swordmasters. This meant that the players had to fight against 5 bosses at the same time. If this continued up until the end, then the battle would be impossible to finish. Fortunately, shadow steps only lasted for a certain duration. For the illusion swordmaster, it was 30 seconds. As long as the players could survive for 30 seconds, then the 5 afterimages would turn back into 1. However, after combining together again, the amount of damage the players had dealt in this battle wasn't additive, but rather an average. This meant that the actual damage the players dealt was the total amount. This made the battle longer. The illusion swordmaster's shadow steps wasn't a one-time use skill. It would continue using it whenever it could until its life was completely gone. Normal parties would run away during this time. Defense was their priority. They weren't looking for damage. The damage would only be of the total anyways. Once the illusion swordmaster merged back into 1, the team would then begin attacking again. But Ye Xiu's team was more heroic. It didn't matter if the damage was split or not, they would still fight like normal. The 5 illusion swordmaster afterimages were also very intelligent, and each found a target to attack. The left rear illusion swordmaster sent a sword draw at Steamed Bun Invasion, who rolled out of the way. Steamed Bun hadn't even gotten up yet when he threw out a sand toss at him. Even though the illusion swordmaster was a boss, it was still blinded for a short while. Steamed Bun Invasion took this opportunity and closed in to whack the back of his head with a brick. After triggering the dizzy effect, he applied poison onto his weapon. He then used inject poison and gave the illusion swordmaster a good dose of poison. The right rear illusion swordmaster hacked forward at soft mist with a collapsing mountain. Tang Ru met with this attack once again, but instead of retreating, she moved forward and once again jumped up to attack. Except this time, she calculated the height of the shock wave. She leaped over it and stabbed forward with a circle swing. Her arms whirled in a circle and smashed the illusion swordmaster onto the ground. She had suffered once before, and now she was going to return it all with even more ferocity. Tang Ru was just that type of girl who refused to accept defeat. The left front illusion swordmaster used triple slash directly to close in on cleansing mist. Sima Cheng immediately jumped up and blasted out an artillery shell, which exploded and sent herself flying backwards from the recoil. However, this shot wasn't able to interrupt the boss's triple slash. 3 sword lights, one after another, chased down cleansing mist, but each slash missed cleansing mist by just a hair's breadth. Sima Cheng clearly had everything under control. Caio Yifan, on the other hand, took the initiative to close in on the boss. After casting an ice boundary, he not only hit his own target, but he also turned the one heading towards Lord Grimm into an ice block. Even in this type of battle, everyone for themselves, if Caio Yifan found an opportunity to, he would still coordinate with others. Ye Xiu knew what to do. When Caio Yifan casted ice boundary, he casted a sword boundary as well. The two began fighting inside these boundaries. His 1000-chance umbrella transformed into the gun form and sent out anti-tank missiles. The target was Caio Yifan's opponent. The 3 missiles exploded, and the illusion swordmaster stumbled backwards a few steps. Caio Yifan made his move right at this moment. He used Moonlight Slash into a full Moonlight Slash followed by a Ghost Slash. The 3 slashes sliced forward. At this moment, he wasn't feeling happy because he had hit the boss, but rather he felt happy because he had coordinated with Ye Xiu. Under his lead, the god had actively responded to his move, making Caio Yifan feel he wasn't alone. Every team member depended on each other, and this was what it meant to be teammates. This was an extremely wonderful feeling. After helping Caio Yifan block his illusion swordmaster, Ye Xiu shook the 1000-chance umbrella into the battle lance form and used a sky strike at the illusion swordmaster. The illusion swordmaster's right-handed sword continued to attack, while using his left-handed blade to block Lord Grimm's sky strike. How could Ye Xiu be tricked by this puny trick? His battle lance suddenly retracted. The illusion swordmaster's left-handed blade blocked nothing. The 1000-chance umbrella had already turned into 2 sections that hung on Lord Grimm's arms. He rolled to avoid the right-handed sword. His 2 arms held the illusion swordmaster tightly and flung the illusion swordmaster away. After using the grappler skill, he changed the 1000-chance umbrella back into a battle lance. Ye Xiu was just about to have his Lord Grimm follow up, when he suddenly heard 2 ring-ring sounds from outside. Ye Xiu had lowered the in-game volume to very low because he frequently had to listen for these sounds. When he heard this, Ye Xiu couldn't help but curse. FCK. Having been on night duty for so many days, he had to bring customers drinks many times. Finally, someone had called for his service at a crucial time. Ye Xiu's left hand quickly left the keyboard and connected to the service line. He asked, "What would you like?" "What?" The first to respond were the 4 players on the team. Ye Xiu hadn't taken off his headphones. 2 colas. The customer's voice came out from the service line soon after. "Just a second." Ye Xiu said The King's Avatar Volume 3 A Stormy Situation Chapter 191 Chapter 191 "I'm in a hurry, I'm in a hurry, hurry up." Turning his head, Ye Xiu yelled towards his mic. Everyone was startled. Even Sima Cheng didn't understand what just 1 second and then an "I'm in a hurry" right after meant. The cautious Kaio Yifan didn't dare ask and pondered over what type of strategy just 1 second and I'm in a hurry was. However, Tang Ru was able to realize what had happened after a short while. Steamed bun invasion, on the other hand, obviously didn't understand, but he would ask what he didn't know and immediately opened his mouth. "Senior, what do you mean? Hurry up and finish this. I have business to do," Ye Xiu said. He moved his hands quickly and the in-game Lord Grimm began fighting more fiercely. Lunging left, rushing right. He even pulled the afterimage that was supposed to be 1-inch ashes. Kaio Yifan was greatly startled and found that he wasn't able to keep up with Lord Grimm's tempo, but this didn't make Kaio Yifan discouraged. He understood what was going on. God was going all out. There was still a gap between their skill levels, so he naturally couldn't keep up. Perhaps the only person who could keep up with this tempo would be a top-tier phantom demon in the alliance like Li Xuan. "Yifan, set up the boundary," Ye Xiu shouted. Kaio Yifan heard this and immediately cast a sword boundary. "Everyone, pull them over here to fight. Steamed bun, pull it over here," Ye Xiu yelled. Tang Ru seized the opportunity to use a falling flower palm and blasted the illusion swordmaster over. Suma Cheng's launcher didn't have any strong blow-away effect, so she used an aerial fire to come into the sword boundary, obtaining the attack buff. Only steamed bun invasion was left. His brawler class didn't have any convenient blow-away skills, so he circled behind the illusion swordmaster and used a knee attack. However, the boss was quick. How could it be so easy to hit him? As a result, steamed bun invasion leaped left and right sneakily. Ye Xiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If you just ran over here, wouldn't he follow you over? Right, steamed bun invasion suddenly understood. It's a bit of a mess, no? After entering the sword boundary, Suma Cheng said to Ye Xiu. The 5 were all in the sword boundary facing against 5 nimble bosses. Guaranteeing that none of them would leave the sword boundary was a type of training only pro teams could do. Their team was still far off from that. Shadow Steps has ended. Just as Ye Xiu's voice fell, the 5 afterimages of the illusion swordmaster blurred again. Instead of 4 of them disappearing, 4 of the afterimages swiftly moved towards a single one. "That one, kill him," Ye Xiu shouted. His Lord Grimm rushed towards the merged illusion swordmaster. The instant Shadow Steps ended, the illusion swordmaster would show an extremely large opening. Besides taking a beating, he wouldn't be able to do anything. However, this opening was only an instant, yet Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm as well as Tang Ru, Suma Cheng, and Kaio Yifan were able to seize the opportunity to burst him. Only steamed bun invasion was still dashing towards the sword soul, but halfway there he saw the illusion swordmaster behind him zoom past him. "Oh no!" steamed bun invasion cried. Unfortunately, there was still some distance between himself and the final target, so all he could contribute was a brick. "Retreat!" Ye Xiu yelled as Lord Grimm moved back. After the illusion swordmaster merged into one, the red aura around him exploded out. The people surrounding him leaped back to avoid it. But under this red blood status, the illusion swordmaster was clearly faster than before. This time, Kaio Yifan was unexpectedly half a step slow and was hit by the red light and instantly shot out into somewhere farther away. Suma Cheng's cleansing mist had already stored a laser rifle. Tang Ru and steamed bun invasion didn't need Ye Xiu to say anything and rushed forward to attack. Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm rushed up as well. Just as he was about to attack, that annoying sound once again ran up from outside of his headphones. "This customer is really annoying," Ye Xiu sighed. In the end, he turned his head, but discovered that the call had come from a different seat. "They've teamed up." Ye Xiu thought as tears streamed down his cheeks. He controlled Lord Grimm while using his left hand to quickly answer the phone. "What would you like?" Ye Xiu asked. "What?" steamed bun invasion asked. "He's not talking to you, steamed bun," Tang Ru explained for Ye Xiu. Then who is he talking to? Steamed Bun Invasion asked. With Internet Cafe customers, Tang Ru said. Internet Cafe? Steamed Bun Invasion was still puzzled. Ye Xiu was also extremely gloomy. This time the customer didn't directly order and instead slowly asked what brand of cigarettes the Internet Cafe had. Yellow Mountain, White Sand, Red Pagoda Mountain, Hibiscus, Nanjing, Red River, 1 pen, Yellow Crane Tower, 5 leaves, which one? Ye Xiu was very familiar with cigarettes. He quickly listed them out. In the end, the customer heard it and fell silent for a long time. He then killed Ye Xiu instantly with one word. Ah, what do you usually smoke? Ye Xiu asked helplessly. Yellow Mountain. We have it, Ye Xiu said. What type? Red. How much money? 22. So expensive. The other side replied. Ye Xiu's eyes began to tear up. In any case, there wasn't any bargaining, so he directly asked, do you want it? But the customer carefully brought the question back to his original point. What else do you have? We have everything. Which one do you want? Ye Xiu asked. Ye Xiu reckoned that normal people couldn't ask for anything too weird. How much for white sand? The customer asked. There's a 6 RMB one, a 10 RMB one, a 13 RMB one, Ye Xiu said. Which type is the 10 RMB one? New quality, Ye Xiu said. Oh, the other side seemed to be pondering over it. This time Ye Xiu didn't urge him and focused on the game. Careful, he's about to split. Pull him back to fight together. Ye Xiu had been talking with the customer the entire time, and the entire team was listening, when he suddenly gave out this warning. The illusion swordmaster blurred and 4 other illusion swordmasters jumped out. But this time, they had planned on gathering together to fight, so the 5 characters didn't scatter and directly faced them. The sword boundary buffed the team's attributes, and the ice boundary made the illusion swordmasters to slow down. On the other side, the customer calmly said, if there's so many white sand types, then why's there only one type for Yellow Mountain? Ye Xiu coughed blood. The new Anhui and Chinese Wind are out. How much for the new quality? They're sold out. No problem, I'm just asking, the customer said. 16, Ye Xiu replied helplessly. The customer was the king. That's more expensive than outside, the customer lamented. Ye Xiu didn't reply and continued to play the game. Right now it was a 5v5. Sword lights, lance blurs, gunshots, the battle was intense. Forget it, I don't need them. The greatest thing was that the customer had talked for so long but didn't buy anything. Just as he hung up, another sound came. Ye Xiu was about to go mad. The other side asked, Cola. Just a moment, I'll be there right away, Ye Xiu yelled. Ye Xiu wasn't an immortal. It was difficult for him to take care of so many things. This time, the customer had made him move a half a beat slower. The illusion swordmaster's backslash unexpectedly hit him, and his character was launched into the sky. Ye Xiu immediately adjusted his camera, but the illusion swordmaster had already taken out his sneaky left-handed blade to attack. A gore cross followed closely behind the backslash and sliced Lord Grimm. With an open wound, his life dropped rapidly. The illusion swordmaster sheathed his sword and began the animation for sword draw. Ye Xiu immediately moved. The illusion swordmaster's sword draw slashed out a cold light which split Lord Grimm into 2 halves. However, it had hit Lord Grimm's shadow clone. The real body had already flashed to behind the illusion swordmaster. Just as he was about to attack, another cold light swooshed towards his body. Ye Xiu wasn't able to block in time. The sword light sent him flying backwards. He turned his camera to look. The sword light had come from the illusion swordmaster Tang Ru was fighting against. The sword draw from that one had flashed towards Ye Xiu. So unlucky, Ye Xiu cursed. His camera was limited in midair, so he hadn't seen it. The illusion swordmaster continued to chase him. Just as it seemed like he would be hit again, Sima Cheng's cleansing mist suddenly sent an artillery shell in front of Lord Grimm, blocking the attack. Oh, you've got skill. And you need to say that, Sima Cheng said. Lord Grim fell to the ground and used quick recover. The time won back from the block was enough for Ye Xiu to get back into tempo. With a quick move, he immediately sent the two illusion swordmasters which were targeting Sima Cheng and him flying. The battlefield returned back to normal. Everyone had seen Ye Xiu's muddled performance. After a short moment of silence, Steamed Bun Invasion suddenly asked, "Senior, you're very busy. What do you do?" "Cafe manager." Ye Xiu let out a long sigh. "Oh, what a coincidence. I also work in an internet cafe," Steamed Bun Invasion said. "Oh, you're also a manager," Ye Xiu said. It wouldn't be surprising since Steamed Bun Invasion was able to play the game all night. If he had a normal job, then playing all night would be okay from time to time, but Steamed Bun Invasion was doing it every day. "No, I'm a security guard," Steamed Bun Invasion said calmly. The four others in the team began sweating. He was a brawler in real life too. Pay attention. It's about to merge. Lord Grim didn't have much life left, but his spirit hadn't been affected by the interruptions. "Don't be polite. Attack! Hurry, hurry!" Ye Xiu yelled. If the customers continued to disturb himself, then he really might die. The King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 192, Chapter 192. Items lead to thinking. The instant the illusion swordmaster merged into one, the team ferociously assaulted it. They all understood that Ye Xiu was in a difficult predicament and had a rough idea why he was in a hurry. Under Ye Xiu's lead, the battle tempo increased. There were often times where they traded blow for blow to deal more damage. In the internet cafe, the customer, who wanted cigarettes, finally decided to buy the 10 RMB white sand and continued to bother Ye Xiu. Ye Xiu had conquered a challenge and won a difficult battle. He gave the customer the usual reply, "Just a second." The illusion swordmaster split and merged until they finally took it down. The service calls began to ring repeatedly again. It was the cola customer again. He was probably dying of thirst. I'm coming, I'm coming." Ye Xiu gave the customer a reply. He grabbed the cola and the cigarettes while taking a quick glance at the items that dropped from the illusion swordmaster. No sword. Ye Xiu was a bit disappointed. He had an item he needed from the illusion swordmaster: Scarlet Illusion Blade. This was an orange weapon for the 1,000 Chance Umbrella's sword form. But an orange weapon was, after all, an orange weapon and wouldn't drop so easily. Ye Xiu sighed as he delivered the cola and cigarettes to the customers. "Let's see what it dropped." In-game, Steamed Bun Invasion excitedly inspected the items that had dropped. He was the most excited of the players there. "Can't use, can't use, can't use. Materials are for senior." Steamed Bun Invasion looked at the equipment. He renounced them as he said what he was thinking aloud. The illusion swordmaster had dropped 3 blue equipment and a few materials, very normal drops. "What's this?" Steamed Bun Invasion asked. The other 3 all saw Line Canyon Map Piece 3. "Oh, it's an item needed to open a hidden dungeon." Kaio Yifen recognized it. "Hidden dungeon, that sounds very hard," Steamed Bun Invasion said. "Yeah, it's harder than normal dungeons," Sima Cheng commented. "How many times can you run it every day?" Steamed Bun Invasion asked. "It's not calculated like that. It requires certain items in order to enter. In theory, as long as you have the items, there's no limit," Sima Cheng said. "Line Canyon Map Piece 3. Does that mean we have to gather more of these?" Steamed Bun Invasion asked. "Yeah, I think it's 4 or 5. Sima Cheng wasn't really familiar with these low-level dungeons. 4. Kaio Yifen said. He had done his homework. At this moment, Ye Xiu had returned. He looked at the items that were waiting to be rolled. "Oh, a hidden dungeon item." Ye Xiu sat down and said after putting on his headphones. "It seems like it's a hidden dungeon that hasn't been run yet." Sima Cheng checked the dungeon leaderboards. "It is, but the items aren't easy to gather. 1, 2, and 3 are okay, but the 4th piece is only dropped by the wild boss, which only spawns 3 times a week. It looks like it hasn't dropped yet," Ye Xiu said. "For hidden dungeons are full of hidden bosses and wild bosses. The drop rate is pretty high too, so running it is quite worth it, Sima Cheng said. Yeah, how could Ye Xiu not know this? His requirements for this dungeon weren't easy to get. For example, the Illusion Swordmaster's Scarlet Illusion Blade or the Wild Boss only drop Amber Crystal. The big guilds might have these rare materials, but they might not use them as a bargaining chip. These were all necessary materials that the clubs needed for researching self-made equipment. If they didn't have enough of them, how could they just give them out to others? Ye Xiu tried by sending Tyrannical Ambition his materials list, but the other side hadn't replied yet. It wouldn't be easy for them to steal a wild boss from the big guilds with their strength. The bosses in the hidden dungeons didn't have anyone that could steal them, but in order to enter the hidden dungeon, they had to steal the Line Canyon Map Piece 4 from the wild boss. No matter how they went about it, it was a dead end. Ye Xiu pondered over this as everyone split the items. They all just randomly rolled for the equipment. The materials and the Line Canyon Map Piece 3 went to Ye Xiu. Whether to sell it or keep it was something he hadn't decided on yet. The following dungeons were normal. After finishing their first run, no hidden boss appeared in the second and third runs. But on third run, they broke the Line Canyon dungeon record. 21:56, beating the former record by around 20 seconds. The former record wasn't at the limit because the big guilds were a bit dispirited towards the dungeon records and were mostly doing them for experience and purple equipment. Set the highest record. With Lord Grimm's existence, they all felt a bit powerless. Lord Grimm crushing arena experts and breaking dungeon records, the players were already used to these. It was only Full Moon Guild who gave their congratulations to Lord Grimm's team under Maple Tree's lead. It seemed like they were showing off their close relationship with them. That night, the players from the big guilds seemed to have vanished. It was dead silent. Before this, Tyrannical Ambition's players still cared for this record, but once the record was broken, Ye Xiu didn't receive any messages from them and suddenly felt that something wasn't right. However, he didn't go and ask them. Actually, Ye Xiu had an urgent need for materials. It was just that he just wasn't as loud as the other big guilds were for their dungeon records. After finishing Line Canyon, they went to Desolate Land. Sima Cheng and Kaio Yifan took their leave first. The remaining three continued to level until they were tired and then went to take a break. Tang Ru liked to solo dungeons to practice her mechanics. Steamed Bun Invasion liked to go to the arena to bully others. Ye Xiu tidied up the materials he had gathered and went to the marketplace. He paid attention to the prices in the 10th server. The prices in the 10th server were still independent. Once players were able to enter the heavenly domain, the prices would rapidly decline until they reached the prices of the old servers. In the market, Ye Xiu was especially mindful of the hidden dungeon items. Sure enough, there were map pieces 1, 2, and 3, but the fourth one wasn't being sold. Wild Boss, Ye Xiu sighed. Besides the wild bosses, they could fight earlier than the others like the Fire Witch. They had no way of competing for the same leveled ones. When the wild bosses respawned, the first ones to arrive would be the big guilds. For them, by the time they found out, the boss would have been killed already. The reason he was able to steal the Blood Gunner and the Goblin Merchant was because he had been invited by the big guilds. Afterwards, for Desolate Land and Line Canyon, Ye Xiu hadn't even been able to see the wild bosses. Ye Xiu turned around and went to his warehouse. Everything in there had practically all been earnings he had won from Team Tiny Earth. His warehouse was wealthy and prosperous. He might be able to trade uncommon materials from his warehouse for items he needed, such as the Scarlet Stinger with Tyrannical Ambition. Right now, the wild bosses were his biggest concern, and as the 1000-chance umbrella continued to level, he would need more and more of these rare materials. It would be extremely difficult if he had to gather them all by himself. If he couldn't find a way to obtain these materials, then he had no other choice but to rely on the clubs. The clubs understood this. They all had guilds supporting them in the game. The guild's purpose was to help provide materials for the club. The materials would then be developed into silver equipment by the tech team and then turned into strength for achievements. The achievements would bring in media, fan support, and better players. Under this cycle, the big clubs would grow bigger and bigger. It was difficult for small clubs to develop. Club Excellent Era was trying to rise up again and had requirements for their Guild Excellent Dynasty as well. However, their development in the old servers had already turned into a standstill. Their prospects at making a breakthrough weren't large, which was why when the new server opened, the guild leader Ye Xiu had put in large amounts of manpower into it. He himself had personally come to the new server to lead. He had even troubled Liu Hao, a pro player, to come set the record for a low-level dungeon. It was because of his huge burden that he knew that things wouldn't be easy to. If everything had gone smoothly in the 10th server, the other guilds would have no way of contesting with Excellent Dynasty, who was going all out. However, a Ye Xiu had appeared. Liu Hao had lost to Ye Xiu. He had brought his many comrades to fight, but they still lost to Ye Xiu. However, he had still found a chance amidst Ye Xiu's dominance in the 10th server. He had to overthrow this mountain because this was where he was going to gamble everything he had. He couldn't lose the King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 193, Chapter 193. Idiot's Guide to Outsiders. Ye Xiu was still just as carefree as ever. Even after staying up all night, he never looked tired and nothing ever seemed to irritate him. To outsiders, they couldn't tell that he was someone who had encountered difficulties. Even more so, they definitely wouldn't know whether he had already figured out a solution to this problem. He made it look like nothing had happened. Tang Ru didn't know that Ye Xiu was pondering deeply over this. All she knew was that it was her turn to buy breakfast. When she returned with breakfast, Ye Xiu had already given his seat to the early shift employees and was leisurely holding a cigarette in his mouth, waiting for his food to arrive. After eating breakfast, the two went to their respective rooms to sleep. At 3 in the afternoon, they woke up. One went to the front desk to work while the other went looking for an empty computer station to sit at. Since it was a Saturday, the internet cafe's business was doing exceptionally well. There were, unexpectedly, no open seats in the smoking area. Ye Xiu circled around the internet cafe and in the end just stood there staring blankly into space for a long time. Business is doing well today. Ye Xiu helplessly returned to the front desk and told his sorrows to Tang Ru. As an internet cafe employee, you should be happy about that. Boss Chen walked over. Business is doing well today. I'm very happy, Ye Xiu said with a blank face. Chen Guo had trained herself. Her ability to restrain herself had gone up. If this had happened a few weeks before, she'd already be shouting and grinding her teeth. What are you doing? Ye Xiu asked Tang Ru. I'm looking at guides, Tang Ru said. Aren't you always looking at guides? Ye Xiu asked while taking a glance at her screen. Oh, a dungeon guide, Ye Xiu was surprised. Tang Ru practically never looked at these. The way they ran the dungeons were usually directed by Ye Xiu. Yeah, I'm just skimming over it, Tang Ru said. Ye Xiu looked more carefully. This girl was currently looking at the introductions to Line Canyon's 3 hidden bosses as well as the wild boss. Clearly, after getting badly beaten by the illusion swordmaster yesterday, Tang Ru realized that facing a never-before-seen boss was troublesome for her. Okay, looking at the bosses is fine, but don't look at anything else, Ye Xiu said. Our play style is very different from what is written in the guides, Ye Xiu said. Why is it different? Chen Guo entered the discussion. All DPS, no MT, no healer, Ye Xiu said. An all DPS team was a very common matter for Ye Xiu and his squad, but to normal players, especially in the new server, this was something that was rarely seen. Even for the big guilds, when they formed an all-DPS team, they often needed experts to substitute for them. An all-DPS team relied on the player's mechanical skill. Without strong mechanics, a guide wouldn't help. "Boss, what level are you on for the whack-a-mole game?" Ye Xiu suddenly asked. "I only play it for fun. At my age, what's the point in practicing?" Chen Guo said. "You could at least improve a bit. If not, then when we get to the heavenly domain and look to party up with you, you'll only be dead weight," Ye Xiu said. Chen Guo was speechless. Besides killing him, she had no other thoughts. "Oh, who wrote this guide?" Ye Xiu's attention suddenly snapped back to Tang Ru's screen. Tang Ru's newly opened guide was a guide for the Line Canyon hidden boss sandworm. Who wrote it? Tang Ru wasn't sure. She went to the top of the page and saw the name of the poster, Concealed Light. "Do you recognize him?" Tang Ru turned her head to ask Ye Xiu. Ye Xiu shook his head. He didn't recognize the id. What's so special about this guide? Chen Guo had also been drawn in and pressed near to look. "The guide's very detailed," Ye Xiu said. "Oh. He's included the probability of every possible scenario. The process is very detailed. He's written down every single detail on how to kill the boss," Ye Xiu said. "No wonder it's so long," Tang Ru said. This guide was several pages long. When she opened it, she jumped up with fright. She hadn't even looked at the content yet. "Whoa, you're right." Chen Guo looked at it and then immediately discovered that this guide chose 5 classes, instructed what equipment to use, how to initiate, what moves to use in specific places. It's practically a video. Chen Guo thought aloud as she looked. The 3 read the entire 7 pages, which was probably around 20,000 words long, 4 minutes 56 seconds. After thoroughly scouring through the guide, the author had even informed the reader how much time it would take to kill the boss down to the second. "Is this for real?" Chen Guo didn't want to believe it. In actuality, she had already begun feeling dizzy after the first page. After that, she stopped reading carefully. "Not a single mistake," Ye Xiu said on the side. If it doesn't allow for any deviation, then doesn't that mean it doesn't allow for any mistakes?" "If there's a mistake, won't it all be over?" Chen Guo said. "That's right." Ye Xiu nodded his head, "But if this were for setting the record, there can't be any mistakes anyways." "Are you saying that his strategy is very good for setting a record?" "That's not true. His strategy is very safe, but it isn't very efficient. However, this might only be because he's researching a hidden boss. For a hidden boss, safety is number 1. Who cares about efficiency?" Ye Xiu said. "That's true." Chen Guo nodded her head. "This person has other guides too." Tang Ru saw the other guides from the author. Here, Ye Xiu saw the name that the author gave to his guides, Idiot Series. "It really is an idiot's guide," Ye Xiu said. This step-by-step guide, which provided instructions for everything down to the small details, didn't need the people using the guide to use their brain in any way. If they followed the steps, then they'd succeed. But it looks like the rating isn't too good. Tang Ru looked at the rating and comments. "It's probably because of the problem the boss talked about," Ye Xiu guessed. "Yeah," Tang Ru nodded her head. The comments were mostly mocking him. Just as expected, they were talking about Chen Guo's problem. No one could ensure that they would be able to follow this type of extremely detailed step-by-step guide from beginning to end. As a result, everyone saw it as a fraud, as a theory. Since this wasn't the author's first guide, below there were comments such as "another fake," "another fantasy fiction." Practically no one supported the author. "The guide isn't wrong, but the limitations are a bit too much," Ye Xiu sighed. "Should we look at his other guides?" Tang Ru moved her mouse around, stopping on different links. Every move stopped on a desired spot. This sister was actually practicing her mechanics even here. "Let's look at one," Ye Xiu said. Tang Ru opened up another one. This guide was on the other hidden boss in Line Canyon, the Scarlet Scorpion Assassin Sting. The style was the same. From the very beginning, the guide chose what classes to use, how to initiate from beginning to end for several pages. Oh, he changed classes. Ye Xiu was curious. Compared to the previous guide, 4 of the 5 classes were different. It was a completely different party setup. To be able to do such a detailed guide, Ye Xiu had thought that the author had a set 5-player team. When Tang Ru heard Ye Xiu's surprise, she opened up another guide. At the very start, he chose another completely different team setup. This guide was for a different hidden boss in Desolate Land. When were these guides made? Ye Xiu suddenly asked. Tang Ru looked at the post time and found that they were all made recently. Could he be a player from the new server? Ye Xiu felt unsure. Tang Ru clicked on the author's name. While taking a looking at his list of works, the Idiot series, the guide stopped at Line Canyon. This really was the current 10th server pace. Log into the game and search for him. Ye Xiu proposed. Tang Ru logged into the game. After Soft Mist went online, she looked up the name. Concealed Light Male Level 32 Summoner. He really is from the new server, Tang Ru said. But new server doesn't mean new player, no, Chen Guo said. If he's not a new player, why would he put so much effort into researching these low-leveled bosses? Ye Xiu said. Chen Guo thought but couldn't come up with anything. Look at this, Tang Ru suddenly said. Ye Xiu looked. The title, The Mystery of the Boneyard 16 minutes and 24-second record. This record was the one Ye Xiu and his team had set in the 10th server. Hung high up on the leaderboards, the team setup could be seen. Battle Mage, Blade Master, Brawler, Launcher, Unspecialized. Concealed Light had analyzed from these 5 classes how this record had been made. From the beginning, he had already analyzed that it couldn't be done with the usual strategy, and that it had to be done by a new strategy. Then what was this new strategy? Concealed Light's analysis wasn't completely correct, but he was very close. There was one point that he was wrong about, though. Concealed Light clearly didn't know of Lord Grimm's 1000-chance umbrella, so his analysis of the unspecialized character's role was completely off. In the end, with the strategy he had designed, he wasn't able to create the 16 minutes and 24-second record. As a result, he gave Lord Grimm and the 5 characters a set of orange equipment, and confidently said that this was how they did it. It wasn't that Concealed Light didn't know how difficult it was to obtain orange equipment in the new server at level 25, but rather, it was that this brother was extremely confident in his analysis and strategy, so by working backwards, he believed that, although having these 5 sets of equipment was ridiculous, it wasn't impossible. But without these equipment, it definitely wasn't possible to create such a record. As a result, he made such a claim. The comments below weren't hard to imagine. They were all practically saying how there was something wrong with the author's brain. Towards these comments, Ye Xiu and Tang Ru expressed their approval. The King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 194. Chapter 194. A not-so-simple new player, this piece of writing makes it sound as if he's always right. Ye Xiu concluded. Well, he is correct in a few places, Tang Ru said. Actually, if you put in time to do research, it's not that difficult to come up with such a strategy. It's just a matter of how much time you are willing to put in, Ye Xiu said. Then do we still need to look at his guides? Tang Ru asked. Let's look at another boss one, Ye Xiu said. Tang Ru clicked on the previous Scarlet Scorpion Assassin guide, and just like that, Ye Xiu lied down on his stomach over the receptionist's desk like an idiot and looked at the idiot's guide. Tang Ru also looked on, but with her experience, she wasn't able to read as fast as Ye Xiu. For this type of extremely detailed step-by-step guide, Tang Ru had a hard time following it. Not long after, she felt like a next-page clicking robot. Chen Guo was actually a bit better in this area. However, she too couldn't read it any further after a short while. For this type of low-leveled boss, even though it was a hidden one, it still wasn't that difficult. Creating such a complicated guide was a bit excessive. What's there to look at? Chen Guo mumbled. There isn't much to look at for the guide. Ye Xiu affirmed that there wasn't any value in the guide, but I wanted to see if he made any mistakes. You're playing find the fault. Chen Guo was speechless. He. Ye Xiu chuckled and then continued to read. Page after page, the guide totaled around 20,000 words long. Tang Ru and Chen Guo decided to stop reading along and just stared at Ye Xiu, waiting for him to find a mistake. There aren't any mistakes, Ye Xiu said after reading it. You're still playing? Chen Guo asked. Read another one, Ye Xiu asked, to which Tang Ru responded by clicking on another link. You guys can keep playing, Chen Guo stretched. She had lost all interest in playing this game. Wow, just as she turned her head, she heard Ye Xiu cry out in amazement. Chen Guo immediately turned back. What? Different classes, Ye Xiu said. How many times do you need to act amazed? Chen Guo rolled her eyes. The guide had switched classes before. They had already been amazed once. But this time he doesn't even include a summoner. Isn't he a summoner? Ye Xiu said. Yeah, Tang Ru nodded her head. They had verified it earlier. Concealed light level 32 summoner. Does he have multiple accounts? Chen Guo guessed. Ye Xiu couldn't deny such a possibility, so he silently read the guide. After annihilating the excessive 20,000-word wall of text, Ye Xiu still couldn't find any mistakes. Even though there were a few places where efficiency wasn't maximized, they were completely possible and didn't contain any mistakes. During this time, a customer in the smoking area left. Usually, when business is doing so well, the customers had the priority to use the computers, but seeing Ye Xiu's pitiful appearance, Chen Guo's heart softened as she waved her hand. Ye Xiu immediately understood her intent and quickly snatched the computer station. Chen Guo and Tang Ru continued to stare at the walls of text on the computer screen. 5 minutes later, is it interesting? Chen Guo asked. No, Tang Ru calmly said. She was tired of reading it. Go find 2 videos to watch. Chen Guo liked to watch brilliant match videos the most. Sure, Tang Ru agreed. She didn't feel as if this guide helped her at all. All she wanted to know was each of the boss's features so she could avoid predicaments like when she fought against the illusion swordmaster. As long as she knew the boss's patterns, Tang Ru believed that she could deal with them relying on her mechanics. As a result, she closed the idiot's guides and began to find a video to watch, but she suddenly discovered that her screen in glory had turned entirely gray. After searching for concealed light, she had forgotten to log out. Right now, soft mist was lying on the ground. A system notification had popped up asking her if she wanted to revive her character. How'd I die? Tang Ru stared blankly at Chen Guo. Were you in the wild? Chen Guo asked. Yeah, you're too careless, Chen Guo said. Dying in the wild, whether it be by a random monster or a vicious peaker, was very common. Go revive and see what you've dropped, Chen Guo said. Tang Ru clicked confirm to revive. Her character returned to Kanji City in a critically ill state. When she opened up her equipment and items, she shook her head. I didn't drop anything, only some money and experience. Those always drop. Check the system log, Chen Guo said. Tang Ru unexpectedly didn't know what that was. Here, Chen Guo took the mouse and clicked it for Tang Ru. The system log recorded her death. She wasn't killed by a monster but rather by a player called Breaking Zero. Breaking Zero, Chen Guo muttered. She opened up the search function and put in the name. The character was online, a level 33 male spellblade. Level 33, he's definitely leveling in Line Canyon. Go and take revenge. Chen Guo gave the mouse and keyboard back to Tang Ru and commanded her like a general. Now, Tang Ru was unsure. Obviously, Chen Guo nodded her head. Tang Ru pointed to the side. Chen Guo turned her head and saw a bunch of customers leaning against the front desk, watching the 2 beauties play the game. I'll go, you take revenge. Chen Guo went to deal with the customers. It's fine. Who knows if I'll be able to find him? It'll be the same if I do it later. Tang Ru didn't really care and logged out of the game to take care of the customers. In the smoking area, Ye Xiu continued to read Concealed Light's Idiot's Guides. With the current pace of the new server, there were a total of 4 dungeons. Each one had 3 hidden bosses for a total of 12. Every one of Concealed Light's hidden boss guides were extremely detailed step-by-step guides that were over 20,000 words long. Even though Ye Xiu read very fast, he still had to read each word one by one. When Chen Guo called for him to eat, he had only finished 6 of them. "You're still reading, I'll eat first." Chen Guo was already used to Ye Xiu's obsession over the game. "Okay. Have you found any mistakes?" Chen Guo asked. "No," Ye Xiu shook his head. "Are you planning on reading them all?" Chen Guo knew that playing Find the Fault wasn't a very fun game. It was actually quite tiring. "We'll see," Ye Xiu said. Little Tang was killed by someone in the afternoon. At the dining table, Chen Guo suddenly remembered. "What happened?" Ye Xiu asked. She forgot to log out of the game. Her character was standing in the wild and someone killed her. The person involved was calmer than Chen Guo. The killer was someone called Breaking Zero, a level 33 spellblade. If you see him, take note. However, Chen Guo remembered better than Tang Ru and told him who the murderer was. "Got it." Ye Xiu laughed. "If I see him, I'll definitely kill him." "Good." Tang Ru nodded her head and then asked, "Did you figure out anything from these guides? This person might not have multiple accounts. With how long the new server has been online, I don't think there's enough time to understand the details of every single hidden boss to such a degree. Right now, I'm doubting whether this author has even killed these hidden bosses. He used previous guides and videos as sources to create such an idiot's guide." Ye Xiu said. "No way." Chen Guo was astonished. "If what you're saying is true, then this person is an extremely amazing new player," Ye Xiu said. "He used his imagination to write these guides, yet there aren't any mistakes," Chen Guo said. "That's why I said he's amazing," Ye Xiu said. "I don't believe it. After I finish eating, there's still another 6 I need to look at." Ye Xiu quickly ate his meal, got up and ran to continue reading the guides. Guide after guide, Ye Xiu read them without missing a word. The more he read, the more he was sure of his judgment. From these guides, he was able to see several not-so-optimal places, which told Ye Xiu that the author had limited in-game experience. These 12 guides were actually just his imaginations after grasping the theory. However, the logic, rationality, and possibilities of these imaginations weren't simple. After reading the last guide, Ye Xiu didn't have any doubts. These 12 guides didn't have any mistakes in them. However, the weaknesses of the author were completely exposed by some of the details. Ye Xiu had already figured out what type of player this Concealed Light was to some extent. He was very interested in this person. Looking at the time, it was already almost 11 o'clock. It was almost time to change shifts, so Ye Xiu turned off his computer and went to the front desk. During the weekends, there were quite a lot of all-night customers, so the front desk was extremely busy. After Ye Xiu finished, it was 11:30. Tang Ru went to her usual spot and the two logged into the game. Ye Xiu went online and searched up Concealed Light's name, but the character wasn't online. Ye Xiu sent a friend request but didn't receive an answer. When he looked at his friends list, Su Macheng and Kaio Yifan still weren't online, but Steamed Bun Invasion was. As a result, he sent Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion a message, telling them to gather in front of the dungeon entrance. "Okay, got it," the two replied. Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm immediately left Kanji City and headed to Line Canyon. Lord Grimm has come online, he's left the city and is now heading towards Line Canyon. Soft Mist has come online, she's heading towards Line Canyon. Her character is still critically ill. Steamed Bun Invasion has left the arena. He's now heading out of the city. The three didn't know that their whereabouts were being tracked by others. 11:41 Desolate Land Coordinates 12:56-1475. Cleansing Mist has come online. 11 44 Desolate Land Coordinates 1256-1466. 1-inch ash has come online. New information continued to be transmitted. The King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 195. Chapter 195. Pursuit from Every Direction 11:50. Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm was on his way towards Line Canyon. The world was bustling with excitement as the time approached midnight. Quite a few players, like Ye Xiu, were impatiently waiting for the dungeon entries to refresh, and many of them were hurrying along the same road as well. Ye Xiu had already contacted Suma Cheng and Kaio Yifan. The two had both gone offline at Desolate Land. As soon as they got on, they headed towards Line Canyon and would arrive before those coming from Kanji City. Outside of Kanji City was a vast expanse of barren land. Although there were a few level 30 monsters scattered here and there, it couldn't be counted as a leveling area. The spawn rate and the concentration of monsters just wasn't enough to satisfy a player's leveling needs. Aside from killing them for quests, no player trained here. After this, the road split into two. The left path led to Desolate Land, while the right led to Line Canyon. When the players reached this point, their levels were obvious at a glance. Those who went left were all level 30 and under, and those who went right were all level 30 and above. These were the players who were considered high-leveled on the new server. When Lord Grimm reached the fork in the road, he went to the right. Coincidentally, the several players beside him unexpectedly all went to the right as well. In the front, many players were heading towards Kanji City from Line Canyon. During this time, these players who were heading in opposite directions bumped into each other. A total of 8 players, 4 on the left, 4 on the right, formed a V formation. The players behind him, those who were going along the same route, had unknowingly gathered close to Lord Grimm. Ye Xiu suddenly realized that something wasn't right and forced Lord Grimm to halt. The several characters next to him instantly halted as well, as if they had received orders. As I thought, Ye Xiu didn't think too much and took the initiative to strike first. His left hand gently moved across the keyboard and executed the first move. These surrounding players didn't react slowly either. As soon as everyone halted all at once, they knew that they had been exposed. The mid-ranged characters immediately began their offensive. Bullets and magic bombarded Lord Grimm from several directions. Lord Grimm was instantly vaporized. Not even a corpse remained. Shadow clone technique. Lord Grimm's real body had flashed in front of someone towards his right, just before they were able to begin their offensive. Without any warning, he lifted his lance and attacked. Right when the shadow clone was extinguished, the players blocking the road were blasted away by Lord Grimm with a falling flower palm. Since he was in a melee form, the players had thought that he was planning to take them all at the same time, but their characters suddenly launched into the sky. Even after being blown away by the falling flower palm, they still hadn't figured out what had happened. These flying bodies opened up the way for Ye Xiu. He had realized that something was wrong earlier than expected. The players wouldn't have completed their formation. The instantaneous movement from his shadow clone technique was directed towards the weakest part of the not yet completed encirclement. The character that had been blown away smashed into one of their allies. Another character, a sharpshooter, tried to dodge the human meat bullets as he fired towards Lord Grimm in an attempt to stall him. Ye Xiu saw what he was doing clearly. Lord Grimm, who had been rushing forward in a straight line, suddenly moved horizontally, avoiding the string of bullets. He then leapt forward and spun around 180 degrees. His 1000-chance umbrella transformed into its gun form and let out a storm of bullets, flying away with an aerial fire. With this sudden increase in speed, the bullets and magic missiles that were flying towards Lord Grimm missed. After using aerial fire, Lord Grimm landed right next to the sharpshooter. The sharpshooter didn't react slowly. He lifted his leg and sent a knee strike towards him, but midway, he was stomped onto the ground by Lord Grimm. However, Ye Xiu had used Punisher one step faster. Bang bang, Lord Grimm shot twice and then continued to rush forward. Two players, one to his left and one to his right, had caught up and sandwiched him. On the left was a berserker. He raised his hands and leapt up high using Collapsing Mountain. Instead of hacking at Lord Grimm, he attacked the empty space where Lord Grimm was heading towards. Clearly, this attack wasn't done to do damage, but rather to block Lord Grimm from moving forward. Lord Grimm didn't seem to have noticed him and continued to rush forward, as if looking for his own death. The berserker was obviously very happy, but the instant his Collapsing Mountain was about to hit, he suddenly saw a cold light flash. Lord Grimm drew his sword and accurately guarded against the Collapsing Mountain. The Collapsing Mountain looked mighty and powerful, while Guard looked tiny and weak, but the effect of a skill wasn't always related to its appearance. Dong! A loud sound rang out. The berserker's greatsword clashed with Lord Grimm's sword. The Guard effect activated. A portion of the damage was mitigated and Lord Grimm was pushed back by the attack. This wasn't something the player on the right had expected. He had originally anticipated for Lord Grimm to be blocked by the Collapsing Mountain, but after Lord Grimm unexpectedly guarded, the knockback effect had caused him to move to a different spot, one right next to him. The player panicked. How could he be as quick as Ye Xiu, who already had everything planned out? As he was pushed back, his 1000-chance umbrella transformed into a tonfa. As soon as he arrived next to the player, he immediately flung him. On that side, that berserker was still in the middle of the recovery animation from using Collapsing Mountain. His shouting ally flew towards him, and the two were sent rolling into a ball. Ye Xiu didn't chase them, but rather Lord Grimm immediately turned around and ran. A mob of players were roaring at him while chasing him. A witch was even more active. He rode his broom and flew quickly. Lord Grimm ran a few steps before suddenly turning around and firing, hitting the witch's head. Blood blossomed out like the autumn leaves. In this moment of confusion, the witch crashed into a tree, causing roars of laughter from behind him. "What are you laughing at?" The witch, who had crashed into the tree, climbed back up. His tone wasn't friendly. Not many paid attention to him. The others continued to chase after Lord Grimm. "Flank, flank," someone shouted. "What FC King flank? How are we supposed to flank with this speed? Is there anyone in that direction? Find someone to block him for a bit." "From where? That place isn't a leveling area." "This guy is doing it on purpose. He deliberately went towards a direction where there isn't anyone positioned. Just chase him. Cut the bullshit, we'll see how far he can run." It seemed like a discussion, but also an argument. The mob of players noisily chased like so. Ye Xiu turned his head to look at the distance. It wouldn't be hard for him to get away, but looking at how orderly everyone was, he was afraid to just let the matter go. These characters didn't have any guild names next to them, but during the fights with a few of them, Ye Xiu had taken note of a few of their ids. He searched them up as he ran, and they were all level 33 characters. Currently, in the 10th server, level 33 characters were practically all elites from big guilds. Even if they didn't have a guild name next to them, that didn't mean that they didn't belong to a guild. Ye Xiu suddenly thought of Tang Ru's soft mist dying in the afternoon. Was that an unlucky tragedy or an intentional ploy? Thinking of this, Ye Xiu immediately sent messages to the other members of the team, asking them for their situation. "Dead," Tang Ru replied. Her soft mist had been in a critically ill state the entire time. She had planned to recover as she walked over, but how could she know she was being watched? In a critically ill state, all stats would be reduced by 80%. Besides looking for an NPC doctor to treat it, the state could only be removed by waiting for 10 minutes. Tang Ru had believed that the walk from Kanji City to Line Canyon would be long enough for her to recover from the critically ill state, so she didn't go and look for a doctor. But with an 80% reduction in stats, how could experienced players not immediately recognize such a chance? Against such a weakened character, no matter how great of an expert they were facing, there was nothing to fear. Tang Ru was met with attacks from all sides. There wasn't much resistance she could put up, and she was sent back to the city again. She was still trying to figure out what had happened. Why are there people trying to kill me? Boss, Steamed Bun Invasion replied in panic. Did you die? Ye Xiu hastily asked. Not yet, I'm running, but they're still chasing, Steamed Bun Invasion said. Ye Xiu had predicted that even if Steamed Bun had encountered this type of situation, he would find all sorts of wretched ways to escape. As for Sima Cheng and Kaio Yifan, he didn't need to worry about them. The two were both pro players. They obviously couldn't stop this group, but running away with their lives should be something they could do. Plus, those two were together. Senior, there are people chasing us. This was Kaio Yifan's reply. Is it Liu Hao again? Sima Cheng guessed. It's not clear yet. Are you fine? Are you with 1-inch Ash? Yeah, we've both ran off. The other side has quite a lot of people, Sima Cheng said. How many? Ye Xiu asked. Dozens. So many. What level are they? From the ones I've seen, they're all level 33, Sima Cheng said. A single guild shouldn't have that many level 33 characters. Ye Xiu had a feeling that the situation was a lot worse than he had originally guessed. The King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 196, Chapter 196. Temporary alliance. These players were all from the big guilds. This could simply be seen from their levels. However, it was impossible for a single guild to be able to produce so many high-leveled players. How many guilds had acted out? 1, 2, 3, or more. Maybe even all of them. No matter what the number was, Ye Xiu wouldn't be surprised. He clearly understood the current plight the big guilds were in. The dungeon's records were being held hostage by him, restricting their development in the 10th server. These big guilds weren't able to rope him in, and they definitely weren't happy. But how could they surrender so easily? It didn't matter whether they were making their decisions based on emotion or reason. In such a hopeless situation, it was very common for people to choose the option of simply eradicating the direct cause. Don't leave the city for now. We're being watched by others, Ye Xiu told Tang Ru. Only this complete noob might not have experienced this type of fighting and killing in a game. Where are you guys? He then asked Sima Cheng and Kaio Yifan for their whereabouts. We're still in desolate land, Sima Cheng said. The enemies might not be limited to just them. There might be backup that will come later. Some of the lower-leveled players may not directly participate in the battle, but they could be messengers. Head towards a place without any players and we'll look for an opportunity to group, Ye Xiu messaged. Okay, we'll send you our coordinates from time to time, Sima Cheng replied. Steamed Bun, where are you? Ye Xiu decided to instruct Steamed Bun Invasion on what to do next. I'm at the outskirts of Kanji City near Hades Village. Steamed Bun Invasion replied. Oh, not bad, you've already run there, Ye Xiu praised. Steamed Bun Invasion, this guy, even though he was a noob at Glory, it seemed like he had played quite a few games before. He had already taken the lead and found an area without many players. Hades Village was one of the small villages on the outskirts of Kanji City. Players would only come here from time to time for a few quests. Besides a few NPCs for quests, 1, there weren't any monsters, and 2, there wasn't good scenery, so no one would come here even if they were bored. This was the best type of place to escape to. If not, then whether it was a leveling area or a safe area, there would be players from big guilds everywhere. There would be nowhere to hide. Yeah, it's the closest place. Steamed Bun Invasion's reply made Ye Xiu realize that he had thought too highly of Steamed Bun Invasion. Did you throw them off yet? Ye Xiu asked. I'm looking, Steamed Bun Invasion said. Be careful, Ye Xiu said and had Lord Grim look behind him. The crowd of level 33 players still hadn't given up. They were all chasing behind him. On this strip of flat land there was nowhere to hide. Ye Xiu also needed to find a place similar to Hades' village, so there was where he was heading towards. "What's going on?" a voice asked, not from the game. Ye Xiu turned his head and saw Tang Ru was at the front desk looking at him. "It's probably players from the big guilds. We took their dungeon records, which is something they care a lot about." Ye Xiu summarized the situation. Because they weren't able to take the dungeon records, they resorted to this. Tang Ru looked down on them. "Who allowed us to be so amazing?" Ye Xiu laughed. "What do we do now then?" Tang Ru asked. "Go to the official site and look up the Heavenly Domain Guild rankings. Any of the first 20 ranks could be our enemy right now. Take note of their guild names and keep a lookout for those names in-game. Walk around in Kanji City and try to go to places with fewer players. Also, check if there are any characters following you. Once your critically ill state has worn off, look for an opportunity to leave the city unnoticed and I'll meet up with you," Ye Xiu said. "Okay." Tang Ru nodded her head. Desolate land leveling area. After finding out where Cleansing Mist and Once-Inch Ash were, quite a few players had joined in on the chase. Some were level 33 elites, while others were normal, second-rate characters. Even though they hadn't been required to do so, after knowing about the affair, they voluntarily joined in. Seeing a destroyed, empty house, Cleansing Mist and One-Inch Ash seized the opportunity to rush into it. The number of players chasing behind them hadn't decreased, though. There even appeared to be more of them. Cleansing Mist looked out from the window on the left while One-Inch Ash looked out from the window in the rear. "There's no one here," Kaio Yifan called. "Go." Suma Cheng had her character run out. The two characters jumped and crouched in midair, escaping from the rear window. There really weren't any players behind the house, so the two of them took advantage of the fact that their chaser's view was blocked and sprinted away. They jumped gently over a dirt wall, and when they landed on the ground, they crouched and moved along the wall. "Over here." Kaio Yifan carefully paid attention to the surroundings while leading the way. Places with fewer monsters will naturally have fewer players. Having little confidence in himself, he explained his reasoning towards Suma Cheng. "Yeah, let's hurry," Suma Cheng said. This was her thought as well. The dirt wall didn't stretch too far. Even though their sneaky movements would throw off their enemies temporarily, they would definitely be exposed soon. They only hoped that this would earn them enough time to widen the distance between them. When they reached the end of the wall, the two characters rushed out, one in the front and one in the back. The two turned their heads to take a look. Their chasers were currently scattered around the outside of the empty house. Clearly, after finding out that they weren't there, they were looking around for them. As soon as they exposed themselves, the enemies immediately began chasing again. Cleansing Mist lifted her gun and sent anti-tank missiles towards them. However, they were too far away and they easily dodged it. Suma Cheng obviously wouldn't stop to fight with them. She continued to run away like crazy. "Sis Mew, see those 4 houses ahead? How about we split up?" Kaio Yifan said. He already suspected that Cleansing Mist was Suma Cheng, but he was too afraid to confirm and too afraid to ask. He believed that he was relatively young in their team, so he called them brothers and sisters. Steamed Bun Bro, Sis Mew, Sis Ru, as well as the most honorable senior. "I'll take the one on the right," Suma Cheng said. "Then I'll take that one on the left," the two said as they entered their respective houses. They hid in houses again. The chasers behind them angrily shouted. The size of these empty houses in desolate land were all around the same. They were all damaged beyond repair. Some had windows and some had large holes in the wall. In short, there was always more than one exit. When their targets went in and jumped out through the window, they lost sight of them for a quick moment. They had been thrown off several times already by this sort of tactic, and the more those two moved, the more energetic they became. "Spread out, surround them," one person yelled. Except when they heard this command, only a few of them followed it. "Spread out," the person roared. A few others moved, but the majority stood still. We don't all need to spread out, do we? We just need to have some go around and look. Someone laughed. Clearly, this crowd didn't have a single leader. The plan to get rid of Lord Grimm through force had been prepared in advance, but they had only begun gathering after finding out that Lord Grimm and his team had come online. The experts from the big guilds simply chose the targets that they happened to be closest to. This type of temporarily put-together team didn't have a leader. Even though they all had the same goal, there were still obstacles. In the alliance Excellent Dynasty had set up, they weren't asking the guilds to completely unify. They only hoped that the guilds would put out some manpower. First, they went to find tyrannical ambition, because tyrannical ambition was in the most desperate situation and naturally wanted a way to resolve the problem. This was why, even though the two guilds weren't usually cooperative, Chen Yehui was confident that the force sent by tyrannical ambition would be massive. However, forming an alliance couldn't just be said and done. It didn't matter if it was tyrannical ambition's Jiang Yu or the 10th server's Cold Knight, they would be suspicious of Excellent Dynasty. Lord Grimm was a mutual enemy of their guilds, that was a fact, but at this moment the other guilds should first be waiting to enjoy the show before acting. And the guild that should have been the happiest was Excellent Dynasty. However, it was Excellent Dynasty that had asked them to form an alliance with them. It was impossible for them to resolve their desperate situation, and no matter how much they thought about it, there seemed to be an ulterior motive. As a result, they probed each other out for almost 3 hours. During this, Chen Yehui invited several other guilds to participate. Only then did Jiang Yu and Chen Yehui gradually comply. In total, there were 7 guilds that joined in. Naturally, they all had an ambition towards dungeon records. Everyone was originally opponents, but currently, they were all set on eliminating their mutual enemy, Lord Grimm. Among this, what surprised Chen Yehui was that Blue Brook Guild had actually decided to reject their temporary alliance. The King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 197, Chapter 197. Opposite direction, Blue Brook Guild was the first guild to think highly of Lord Grimm and ask him to help set a record. Naturally, they were also the first guild to try and rope in Lord Grimm. For such a talent to appear, as long as the guilds recognized it, none of them would be indifferent. But now, Blue Brook Guild was the guild that had been damaged the most by Lord Grimm. It didn't matter how they had first met. From Chen Yehui's eyes, Blue Brook Guild had to be filled with resentment. Their current situation was even worse than tyrannical ambition's current situation. Who would have thought that they would immediately reject his proposal without hesitation? Their firm attitude made Chen Yehui feel indescribably sour. He felt that Blue Brook Guild's calm and resolute rejection wasn't out of impulse or fear, but rather a strategic decision made after much consideration. Could they have realized that Lord Grimm is Ye Xiu? Chen Yehui felt uncertain. Lord Grimm was Ye Xiu. This was information that he definitely wouldn't tell others about. Ye Xiu's awe-inspiring skill wasn't the reason. After all, this was still just in the game. If 5 can't beat you, then I'll send 10. If 10 isn't enough, then I'll send 20. If 20 isn't enough, then I'll send 100. It didn't matter how skilled you were, you would eventually be killed from being attacked from all sides. The reason Chen Yehui was too afraid to tell others of Lord Grimm's identity was because of Ye Xiu's fame. A god for 10 years. How many Glory fans looked up to him as their idol? If this came out, Chen Yehui was afraid that a bunch of experts would run over to Ye Xiu's side and beg him to take them in as disciples. Especially his Excellent Dynasty, he didn't dare tell them. Ye Xiu's fans were even more loyal here. In the end, he decided not to probe out Blue Brook Guild to see if they knew. Fortunately, the number of guilds he had gathered was already enough. This time, not only did he want to exterminate Lord Grimm, but he also wanted to take down Ye Xiu's team. Taking out his anger on Ye Xiu was for his own selfish reasons. Ye Xiu was more concerned about guild matters. If he didn't take down the team, he had no way of effectively carrying out his plans. He had already experienced the battle strength of Ye Xiu's team when they were together. The strength of Lord Grimm, Soft Mist, and Steamed Bun invasion left him in fear, but this time, their forces had an even greater advantage in numbers. They had also surrounded them separately. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. Ye Xiu listened to the reports from those beneath him and also led others to provide further assistance to their troops, but when he got to Desolate Land, he saw the players scattered about, running around with their targets' whereabouts unknown. Where are they? Ye Xiu saw players from his guild and went over to ask them. He ignored the others. Even though he was a guild leader, the others wouldn't follow his orders. It was even possible for die-hard tyrannical ambition players to secretly ambush him. Ye Xiu didn't doubt this. This alliance was simply to gather players to deal with Lord Grimm. There was no intention of becoming friends. They went into the houses, the left and right ones. An excellent dynasty player immediately answered. Then what are you waiting for? Chase, Ye Xiu said. We have them surrounded, the player said helplessly while looking at the chaotic scene. Right, they were surrounding them. Our people come here. Ye Xiu didn't attempt to command the entire scene and only called over his brothers. Seeing their guild leader, the excellent dynasty players gathered together. You two stay here, the others come with me. Ye Xiu had two players stay in positions that the other guilds weren't covering. Players had already begun storming into the houses on the left and right. They're not in here, the players yelled and leapt out of the window. Those who made a mistake wound up getting stuck in the window, causing players from other guilds to laugh at them. The others who had spread out and surrounded the houses didn't find any signs of cleansing mist and 1-inch ash. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Everyone shouted and immediately rushed forward, thinking that their targets had taken the chance to widen their distance. Under their eyes, in the empty house pressed between the house on the left and on the right, Cleansing Mist and 1-inch Ash were quietly crouching in a corner. Cleansing Mist slowly moved to an opening in a wall and took a quick glance outside. Ha ha, we fooled them. Just as expected, they got used to us running in the same direction. Suma Cheng messaged Caio Yifan. They're not organized well, which was why I believed they would make such a mistake, Caio Yifan said. He had noticed their opponent's disorderly movements and had come up with this plan after consulting with Suma Cheng. Before, they had used blind spots to escape. Once, twice, thrice, they made an impression on their enemies. As a result, they made a sudden change in this terrain and didn't continue running. Instead, after passing through the left and right houses, they snuck into the house in the middle. Everyone hurried past these houses in order to see where the two had run off to. Let's go, Suma Cheng told Caio Yifan. They obviously couldn't stay here forever. When their enemies realized that there was no sign of them, they would definitely look around and find them. The two wanted to use this opportunity to escape in the opposite direction. Caio Yifan's 1-inch Ash immediately moved to entrance to the house, but just as he exposed half of his body, he immediately went back. There are players outside, Caio Yifan messaged Suma Cheng. What? Suma Cheng's cleansing mist also went to the entrance. Sorry, Sis Mu. Most of this escape plan had been proposed by Caio Yifan. It was a rare moment of confidence, but in the end, he found that there were enemies left behind. Seeing that he had made a mistake, Caio Yifan immediately felt upset and scared again. No problem, rush out, Suma Cheng said as she moved out from the room. The enemies that had stayed behind were the players Ye Xiu had ordered. In reality, there wasn't any error in Caio Yifan's plan. He just hadn't thought that backup would arrive at this moment, and there just happened to be a guild leader level character like Ye Xiu. The new players were naturally unaccustomed to their previous pattern. Ye Xiu also had authority over his players. Caio Yifen's plan had been formulated throughout their escape, so new players hadn't been taken into account. As soon as the two saw Cleansing Mist rush out, they were surprised, but quickly sent messages to everyone. Cleansing Mist's artillery shells flew over. The two immediately tried to dodge it, but Sima Cheng's anti-tank missiles were sent in 3 different directions, so it would have been better to stay still, but it was too late by the time they realized it. The smoke from the artillery barrage hadn't yet dissipated when 1-inch Ash rushed in front of one of the players and used a ghost slash. The player hastily jumped back and dodged it, but 1-inch Ash quickly matched it with a moonlight slash. The player wasn't able to react in time and was launched up into the air by the moonlight slash. A full moonlight slash followed after the moonlight slash, a very common ghost blade combo. The full moonlight slash caused the player to fly higher into the air. A series of gun fire followed closely after. Cleansing Mist shot up towards the sky with a Gatling gun. The brother rolled about in the air and took a while before he fell to the ground. The other player had wanted to help, but was easily knocked to the ground by a few normal attacks from Caio Yifen. Caio Yifen raised his sword and cast a sword boundary. Cleansing Mist entered it and fired a laser rifle and cannonball. The buffed damage and explosiveness from the sword soul added to its might. These two unfortunate players didn't have any chance of fighting back. If they weren't rolling around in the sky, then they were rolling around in the dirt. After a short moment, they turned into 2 corpses. Chen Yehui received the messages from the 2 who stayed behind and immediately led his excellent dynasty players to return and chase them. The other guild's players saw this and stared blankly. Without anyone guiding them, they just did what everyone else did and followed along. In the end, when they returned to the rooms, there was no sight of them. "Where are you?" Chen Yehui asked the 2 players. "Where are they?" The other guilds all asked Chen Yehui. "Dead." Those 2's replies were quick, but Chen Yehui wasn't able to reply to the other players. Everyone split up in search. Chen Yehui looked around and then helplessly said, "There were quite a few destroyed houses, walls, and holes, and it wasn't easy to check every one of them." "FCK, what are we looking for?" The other guilds' players didn't know what had happened and were cursing. "Those 2 players hid over here and took the opportunity when we rushed out to kill our 2 brothers. Right now, we don't know where they escaped to." Chen Yehui wasn't happy either, but had no choice but to explain it to these people. With this, there was nothing they could complain about. Search. Everyone split up and searched around, but they didn't know that Cleansing Mist and 1-inch Ash had already returned to the destroyed house and jumped out of the window. Playing another game of Opposite Direction, The King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 198. Chapter 198. A bro at the bottom of a well outskirts of Kanji City, Hades Village. Inside a dried-up well. Steamed Bun Invasion stood upright and exposed a small bit of himself in order to take a quick sweep of the surroundings. Initially, Steamed Bun Invasion had randomly hopped down during his escape. His reason for doing so, because it was close. Unexpectedly, this seldom visited well gave him a hiding place. Steamed Bun Invasion had bravely begun a game of hide-and-seek with his pursuers. The originally tranquil village had become a noisy mess because of Steamed Bun Invasion's intrusion. The NPCs were still calmly following their predetermined routes, but the rampaging footsteps of a dozen players who were chasing Steamed Bun Invasion resounded throughout the village. The communication between them also came into Steamed Bun Invasion's ears from time to time. Steamed Bun Invasion hastily ducked down and listened intently to what his pursuers were saying. Where'd he go? He can't have run too far. He has to be in the village. What a cunning guy to run to such a place. Some footsteps were far, some were close. They were clearly looking everywhere. Steamed Bun Invasion was listening and just happened to be pondering whether he should stand up straight to take a quick glance around, when a white light suddenly flashed in front of him and a character appeared. Not waiting for Steamed Bun Invasion to open his mouth, that character cried out in fright. "Who are you?" "Quiet." Steamed Bun Invasion hurriedly stopped the person from saying anything more. What a coincidence. To think I'd bump into someone in this type of place. This person had absolutely no idea what was going on and continued talking. Steamed Bun Invasion heard footsteps coming closer and closer. He didn't know whether it was because of the noise coming from here. Even though this type of hiding place was difficult to find, if he was found, then it'd be difficult to escape from. Steamed Bun Invasion understood this, so as soon as he heard footsteps coming closer, he wouldn't take any risks and immediately jump outside to escape. Just as he was about to jump out, he suddenly heard the guy in front of him shout out loudly, "Huh, Steamed Bun Invasion. Are you the Steamed Bun Invasion in Lord Grimm's team on the Dungeon Record rankings?" "Yup, that's me, but right now I don't have time to accept your interview. I'm currently hiding from an intense chase. I'm about to rush out," Steamed Bun Invasion said with a low voice when he suddenly leapt out from the well. He looked around him and sure enough, people were heading towards the well. Seeing him come out, they immediately shouted, "He's over here." Steamed Bun Invasion didn't stop. As soon as he landed on the ground, he took off. "Hey, wait up," the person in the well yelled and then immediately took off too. However, he didn't use enough strength and didn't jump high enough. His character's 2 feet hit the side of the well and he was knocked back into it. None of the pursuers knew who this guy was, so they also called, "There's even one waiting to ambush us here." "Uh-oh, it might be a trap," someone said. Some of the players immediately stopped, fearing that there might be hidden troops hiding in the well. The number of players chasing Steamed Bun Invasion wasn't as numerous as the number of players chasing Su Ma Cheng and Kyo Yifan, though because of this, they were more unified. There were a dozens players here, from a total of 2 guilds, and they weren't mortal enemies like Tyrannical Ambition and Excellent Dynasty either, so there was room for discussion. In this short moment of hesitation, that brother in the well used enough strength this time and jumped out of it. This character was wearing cloth armor and his hands clutched a magic rod, indicating that he was a mage. After jumping out of the well, he ignored the pursuers and chased after Steamed Bun Invasion. Seeing him run, the players realized that it didn't seem to be an ambush. The chances of one were too small, so they immediately began chasing. Each of the 2 guilds had separate leaders, so there wasn't much confusion. The pursuers chased after him closely. Steamed Bun Invasion hastily glanced around to see if there were any places to hide like before. Just as he was looking, he heard someone yell from behind him, "Run towards the left." The voice sounded a bit familiar. Steamed Bun Invasion didn't think too much about who had said it and headed towards the left. There wasn't anything special to the left, only an ordinary straw cottage. Steamed Bun Invasion ran behind the straw cottage and temporarily left his pursuer's line of sight. "Jump in from that window." At this moment, that voice came again. Steamed Bun Invasion searched for the so-called window when he realized who the person giving him directions was. It was that bro he met at the bottom of the well. "You're a really good guy," Steamed Bun Invasion said and saw which window the bro was referring to and jumped in. The bro from the bottom of the well quickly caught up and crouched down to jump in like Steamed Bun Invasion. The first time he crashed into the window sill and fell down. The second time he crashed again and fell. The third time, Steamed Bun Invasion was at a loss. "What are you doing?" "I'm jumping in," the bro from the well said. "I really can't tell," Steamed Bun Invasion said. The bro from the well understood that he wasn't skilled enough. His movements weren't precise enough. After failing 3 times, he gave up and continued to run left. "Hey, where are you going?" Steamed Bun Invasion stuck his head out and asked him. "Put your head back. Add me as a friend and then let's talk." The bro from the well ran as he turned his head back to say. Steamed Bun Invasion pulled back his head and received a system prompt. "Concealed Light requests to be your friend." After accepting the invite, he received a message from Concealed Light. After 8 seconds, come out through the door. Even though Steamed Bun Invasion didn't know what was going on, he did as he was told. He counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then ran out of the straw cottage's door, bumping into Concealed Light, who had just come in from the entrance. Over here, Concealed Light led the way, while Steamed Bun Invasion followed. The two weaved around Hades' village. At first they could still hear the footsteps and voices of the pursuers, but gradually the sounds died down and seemed to have returned to the sounds of the NPC's slow steps and calm village. Did we throw them off? Steamed Bun Invasion glanced around. Quiet. After confirming the situation, it was Concealed Light's turn to warn Steamed Bun Invasion. One of Steamed Bun Invasion's strength was that he was able to listen to others' suggestions and immediately shut his mouth. At this moment, Concealed Light's line of sight fell to the sandstorm claw that Steamed Bun Invasion was holding, a brawler weapon. "Your weapon isn't an orange weapon?" Concealed Light suddenly asked. "Yeah. Why don't you use one?" "I don't have one." "What do you mean you don't have one?" "It was too expensive. Senior wouldn't buy it for me." The two talked like this, with one asking and one replying, but they weren't on the same page. This Concealed Light was that author of the Idiot series, the level 32 summoner Concealed Light, and was absolutely confident in his judgment. He was certain that Lord Grimm's team all had orange equipment, but seeing that Steamed Bun Invasion didn't have one, he refused to believe his judgment was wrong. His intent wasn't being picked up by Steamed Bun Invasion, who was answering the questions honestly. "Senior, you mean Lord Grimm?" Concealed Light said. "Yeah, you know him." Steamed Bun Invasion was pleasantly surprised. "I don't," Concealed Light said, but was still confused on how his judgment had been wrong. "How do you not have an orange weapon?" "Because we didn't have enough money," Steamed Bun Invasion replied as before. "Their footsteps are coming closer." Steamed Bun Invasion suddenly heard footsteps. "Let's go along this road. We'll definitely be able to run back to the city before they catch up." Concealed Light began running forward. "I'm not going back to the city." Steamed Bun Invasion said. "Then where are you going?" "I'm getting ready in a bit to meet up with Senior." Steamed Bun Invasion said. "Are you going back to the city? That's perfect. You can lead them away and I'll be good then." Concealed Light coughed up blood. Shouldn't he be the one without any problems? He still didn't know why Steamed Bun was being chased. The only reason he was helping Steamed Bun Invasion was because he was a member of the Dungeon Record team, one of his research subjects, a character whose equipment he had deduced. A luxurious orange-equipped team. This was an unrealistic argument, and Concealed Light understood this. Compared to the other idiot's guides, he spent more time for the Boneyard Record. Unfortunately, that was the only conclusion he could come up with, but he wasn't absolutely confident. He really hoped that he could verify his judgment, but he was never able to. Even after knowing that Steamed Bun Invasion didn't have an orange weapon, Concealed Light refused to give up. Steamed Bun Invasion's very casual suggestion to let Concealed Light lead the pursuers away did make him want to cough blood, but he wouldn't argue over something like this. He turned his head to look at Steamed Bun Invasion and suddenly shouted, "Wow, you're level 31 now. You've probably switched equipment. You previously used a level 28 orange weapon, right?" "Nope, I've never used one before," Steamed Bun Invasion said. "Impossible." Concealed Light was concerned about this. "Why aren't you going back to the city? They're coming closer." Steamed Bun Invasion was concerned about this. "They're not chasing me, so why should I care?" Concealed Light said. "What then? Why are you running?" Steamed Bun Invasion asked in curiosity. Concealed Light was speechless. "If you won't run, then I'll be running." Once Steamed Bun Invasion saw that he wasn't going to lure them away, and there was no way he could stay in the same place for too long, he immediately began running again. "No, no, you can't go that way." Seeing where Steamed Bun Invasion was running, Concealed Light blurted out the King's Avatar Volume 3, A Stormy Situation, Chapter 199, Chapter 199. The Escape Member. Concealed Light, and Steamed Bun Invasion weren't friends. It was just that when he found that Steamed Bun Invasion had run onto a route where he would be quickly discovered, his autocorrect function activated and autonomously shouted out, "Okay, then where should I run to?" Steamed Bun Invasion immediately returned. "Over here." Concealed Light continued to lead the way. "Where are you guys meeting up at?" Concealed Light asked. He might as well just send him there. "I dunno," Steamed Bun Invasion said bluntly. Concealed Light seemed to have stumbled on the flat ground. It looked as if he had accidentally pressed the crouch command. In that instant his finger had clearly touched the wrong key. "If you don't know, then where are we running to?" Concealed Light said. "How should I know? You're the one leading," Steamed Bun Invasion said. Concealed Light coughed up blood. "You say a place and I'll bring you there." "Wait, let me ask." Steamed Bun Invasion sent a message to Lord Grimm. "Where are you right now?" Ye Xiu asked. "Hades Village." "What? You're still there? Have you escaped yet?" Ye Xiu asked. "Not yet." "How many pursuers are there?" Ye Xiu asked. Let me ask." Steamed Bun Invasion replied. "Ask." Ye Xiu was confused. "Hey, how many players are over there?" Steamed Bun Invasion asked the lead, Concealed Light. "How should I know? It's not like they're chasing me. Maybe a dozen or so," Concealed Light said. "A dozen?" Steamed Bun Invasion answered Ye Xiu's question. "How'd you find out?" Ye Xiu had a hard time understanding. "I met a bro at the bottom of a well and he told me." Steamed Bun Invasion replied. "A bro at the bottom of a well." Ye Xiu was getting more and more confused, but thinking of Steamed Bun Invasion's brain, he didn't ask to find out. "Come to Kanji Forest," Ye Xiu replied. Glory's map didn't only consist of uninterrupted leveling areas. There were also quite a few commonplace transition maps. Similar to the numerous villages scattered around the outskirts of Kanji City, these places were mostly used for quests. Kanji Forest was this type of place. Outside of Kanji City, it was a forest close to Line Canyon. When there weren't players there for quests, it was even more empty than those small villages. "We're meeting up at Kanji Forest," Steamed Bun Invasion quickly reported to Concealed Light. "Here." Concealed Light immediately figured out which direction to go in. Steamed Bun Invasion didn't say anything further and directly followed behind him. Concealed Light felt a bit lonely as well as confused. Isn't this Steamed Bun Invasion too simple? It's not like we know each other. How could he just follow along without even asking who I am? Concealed Light was puzzled over this question, but more importantly, he wanted to obtain approval. Every one of the guides Concealed Light had published had been seen by readers as nonsense, making him feel very angry. His guides were all correct. Why did those people say his guides were unrealistic? Why weren't they saying their skill wasn't good enough? At this moment, he was leading Steamed Bun Invasion away from the pursuers with ease. Yet this Steamed Bun Invasion wasn't even asking him how he could do it. Concealed Light felt very lonesome. He finally couldn't take it anymore. "Do you know why we have to run this way?" "Why?" Steamed Bun Invasion blurted out. "Because the pursuers are around 5 coordinates away from us. By going in this direction, the positions of those 5 coordinates behind us are held by 4 houses that are blocking their view. If we went that direction you were previously going along, they'd have been able to find you in less than 10 seconds." Concealed Light happily explained. He was looking forward to Steamed Bun Invasion's next question. For example, how did you know that they were 5 coordinates behind? "Oh," Steamed Bun Invasion said. Concealed Light's fingers went astray again. This time it was his right hand. He accidentally left-clicked and he waved his magic rod. "So you're saying that the people behind us aren't able to see where we're going?" Steamed Bun Invasion said. Yes. The following routes I'm going to bring you along will all make the pursuers unable to figure out where we are. This is why we're able to shrug them off so easily," Concealed Light said. "But it looks like there are people in front of us," Steamed Bun Invasion suddenly said. In front. Concealed light looked forward but didn't see anyone. I heard footsteps. My 1.5 hearing. Steamed bun invasion said. 1.5 hearing. Concealed light was confused, but at this moment, just as steamed bun invasion said, a player suddenly jumped out from behind a rock. Maybe he's just passing by. If he's with those guys behind us, then our position's been exposed. From the route those guys will choose to take, we should kill him. Steamed bun invasion had already gone up to kill him. Sure enough, the person behind the rock wasn't some passerby. When he saw steamed bun invasion, he immediately took out his sword and rushed forward, a blade master. Concealed light had no choice but to enter the battle as well. As he moved, he began muttering, "Brawlers and blade masters have mid-range CC skills. Both sides will need some time to close in on each other. Since they will restrict each other, I should summon after going around the blade master to his rear." Brawlers have brick buster and sand toss, two mid-ranged skilled. If the skills are used one after the other, then he can control the blade master for 10 seconds. With my movement speed, I can only choose to head towards the 10 o'clock position. Even though I'll be somewhat close to the blade master, there's a stone wall over there which can be used to block the blade master's sword draw, so I won't actually be in his attack range. Then once I get behind the wall, I'll be behind the blade master. First, I'll summon Thunder Spirit. The stun effect from the attack can be used to match with the brawlers. "Hey, what are you muttering?" Steamed bun invasion heard concealed light whispering something but couldn't hear clearly. While he asked, he rushed forward, sending a brick flying forward. "FCK, how can you waste your brick like that?" Concealed light saw this scene and immediately shouted. "So what?" Steamed bun invasion replied to him and used the opportunity to close in while the opponent was dodging. This blade master wasn't weak. After dodging the brick, he drew his sword. Sword draw. Steamed bun invasion rolled to dodge the sword light and reached in front of the blade master. He raised his hands and used an uppercut. The blade master moved back and dodged. He then followed up with a lunge to counterattack. This guy had clearly spent a few skill points on this skill. This skill no longer made only 2 stabs, but 4. 4 sword lights stabbed forth towards steamed bun invasion. As each one flew forward, steamed bun invasion leapt back. The sword tips flashed in front of him, but never hit. At this moment, steamed bun invasion swung his hand and threw a sand toss at him. Sand toss was considered a magic attack, so the blade master's guard had no effect, but the low damage skill could be endured as long as he wasn't blinded. This blade master didn't dodge this sand toss and instead turned his head towards a different direction. At the same time, he followed up with an attack and a triple slash headed towards steamed bun invasion. Just with this skill, it could be seen that this blade master wasn't ordinary. Concealed light predicted that the two sides wouldn't meet each other in close combat for 10 seconds, but steamed bun invasion used a brick and a forward roll to directly close in on the opponent. Concealed light was still going forward with his original plan, but while he was going around, because of steamed bun invasion's sand toss, the blade master's head suddenly turned to his direction, catching him. Concealed light panicked, but saw that the blade master's sword was still aimed at steamed bun invasion. Steamed bun invasion had used this instant to complete his movement. When the blade master's triple slash flew past, steamed bun invasion lifted his hand and clawed, clasping onto the blade master's throat, pushing him into the wall. Knee strike, slap, inject poison. Steamed bun invasion ignored the blade master's struggling and used the time while the opponent's defense was reduced from the strangle to quickly send a few attacks forward. After the strangle finished, steamed bun invasion floated to the side of the blade master's body and accurately smashed a brick into the blade master's head, inducing a dizzy effect. Steamed bun invasion smoothly applied poison to his weapon and followed up with a combo. The Blade Master was trapped against the wall and had no way of escaping. Any place he tried to dodge to was met by a block from Steamed Bun Invasion. The two sides traded health, but clearly, Steamed Bun Invasion had the advantage. Not long after, Steamed Bun Invasion took down half of the Blade Master's life and beat the Blade Master into the wall. The Blade Master's life continued to drop until he fell. Steamed Bun Invasion looked around and saw that Concealed Light was jumping again and again behind a broken-down wall and crashing into it. "Bro, what are you doing? Are you trying to rape that wall?" Steamed Bun Invasion asked. Concealed Light was extremely gloomy. He just wanted to jump onto the wall, but the wall was a bit tall, and with his jumping strength, he had to grasp the distance and timing in order to succeed. But as he was trying, unknowingly, that Blade Master had already been defeated by Steamed Bun Invasion, yet he still hadn't jumped onto the wall. "Hurry up and run. They're here." By the time they finished killing the Blade Master, the pursuers finally appeared in their view and were quickly catching up. Concealed Light didn't try and fight with the wall anymore and quickly went around it. "Which way?" Steamed Bun Invasion asked. Over here." After seeing where those pursuers were coming from, Concealed Light continued to lead the way. Except this time he was no longer as proud as before. "You have really weird tastes. What astrological sign are you?" This time, Steamed Bun Invasion took the initiative to ask the King's Avatar Volume 3 A Stormy Situation Chapter 200 Chapter 200 PK Kanji Forest. Ye Xiu told everyone to meet here. At this moment, he was also rushing towards there with his Lord Grim. However, he hadn't fully thrown off the pursuers yet. Even though he had fully utilized his abilities and stamina to widen the distance, he had no way of completely breaking away from the pursuers. The other side had many players, and any random player nearby could be one of their eyes, escaping by using the pursuers' dead angles. Ye Xiu was also using this type of method. However, as he ran, he suffered from a barrage of trash talk. PK. Right when it was almost midnight, Huang Xiaoshan's flowing tree unexpectedly came online and once again began bothering Ye Xiu to fight him in the arena. "I'm busy," Ye Xiu replied firmly. "You can run dungeons later," Huang Xiaoshan said. "If you know that I'm going to run dungeons, why don't you come on earlier?" "If I come on earlier, are you there? Are you there? Are you there?" Huang Xiaoshan replied. Not today, tomorrow," Ye Xiu thought. Today he had gone to read Concealed Light's Idiot's Guides. He really hadn't been online in the evening and had only come on at 11:30. "You said it, yeah. Your word counts, yeah." "Okay then," Huang Xiaoshan said and then went quiet. These gods were both players with frightening hand speed. Ye Xiu chatted while he made his Lord Grim continue running. His speed hadn't slowed down much. However, after only quietly running for a few minutes, he suddenly received another message. Since he had to pay attention to Suma Cheng and the other team members' situation, Ye Xiu had to keep his chat box open. But when he looked, he saw that it was Huang Xiaoshan's flowing tree again. PK. Not waiting for Ye Xiu to reply, another message came. "It's tomorrow." A happy face emoticon even came after this. Ye Xiu looked at when the message was sent, 000108. He was speechless. "Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. You said tomorrow, it's already tomorrow." Huang Xiaoshan continued to type. "Come to Kanji Forest." Ye Xiu replied. "For what?" Huang Xiaoshan asked. "It's a long story. If you come, you'll know." Kanji Forest was completely silent. Huang Xiaoshan's flowing tree came and looked around, but only saw two players who were leaving after finishing their quests. There wasn't any sign of Lord Grim. "I'm here. Where are you?" Huang Xiaoshan messaged. "Almost there." "Why here?" Huang Xiaoshan asked. FCK, I'm going to use my main account," Huang Xiaoshan shouted. "Not in the arena, real PK in the wild." Ye Xiu replied. "You're 4 levels higher than me, aren't you ashamed of yourself?" Huang Xiaoshan replied. I thought you'd feel ashamed." Ye Xiu said, "What should I be ashamed of? Don't you feel ashamed? Why should I be ashamed? That's good, as long as you don't feel ashamed. Hey, what are you saying?" As soon as this message was sent, Huang Xiaoshan's flowing tree left the forest and saw Lord Grim in front of him, alternating between moving slowly and quickly. He was using the common pro-player technique for optimizing stamina usage and was running towards him. Huang Xiaoshan's flowing tree met up with him, and just as he was about to say something, he immediately saw a wave of dust rolling forward not far behind Lord Grim. "What you do?" When Lord Grim reached in front of him, Huang Xiaoshan asked. "Didn't you want a PK? Go up, hero," Ye Xiu said. "Are you joking? Do you know who I am? How could I bully normal players?" Huang Xiaoshan shouted. "Weren't you asking why you should be ashamed?" Ye Xiu asked. "FCK, I wasn't talking about this." Huang Xiaoshan felt depressed. He had used tomorrow to trick him, which Ye Xiu responded with his own ashamed counter. "Yo, there's quite a lot of people. What you do?" Huang Xiaoshan looked at the incoming pursuers. There were at least 20 or 30 people. To gather up like this just for a single person, this was rarely seen. "I set dungeon records," Ye Xiu said. Huang Xiaoshan stared blankly for a bit and then realized what was going on. He laughed out loud. "Serves you right. To let you be so arrogant, to let you be so shameless. What's your identity? Stealing records from new server players. How shameful. What's so shameful about that? Right now I'm just a normal player too. Taking records is normal." Ye Xiu plainly said, "But you probably haven't seen such a large mob in a while. Are you scared?" "How could I go against normal players? I'll keep my distance from you," Huang Xiaoshan said. He really did let his flowing tree pull away from Lord Grim a bit. At the moment, a large mob of characters stormed into the forest. "There's someone here." Quite a few noticed Huang Xiaoshan's flowing tree. In this team of pursuers, there was a guild leader-level character, Samsara's 10th server leader, Lonely Drink. He had failed last time to rope in Lord Grim. He had been especially infuriated when the other side used Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V to reply to him. In the current alliance, he was one of the more active members. When he heard where Lord Grim's and his team's whereabouts were, he didn't choose to go to the nearest member but chose to directly pursue Lord Grim. It couldn't be denied that the reason was mostly due to his own selfish reasons. Flowing tree. Lonely Drink saw this he recited it, and felt that it was a bit familiar. "He's the one who helped Lord Grim set the boneyard record." Someone suddenly shouted in the crowd. Some shouted out in surprise at Flowing Tree's appearance. Others were checking the dungeon record rankings. It seemed like Samsara's players were the calmest. They had a guild leader, and with a leader here they only had to wait for his orders. "He's with Lord Grim, don't be polite," Lonely Drink decided. As soon as Samsara's people heard their guild leader speak, they immediately rushed forward without hesitation. With people leading the way, the players from the other guilds followed as well. 30 members suddenly headed towards Flowing Tree together. "FCK, what are you doing?" Huang Xiaoshan was startled. How did he pull in aggro? He immediately had Flowing Tree run further into Kanji Forest. "Don't let any of them go," Lonely Drink shouted. Those that were under him listened to him, as well as a few of the players from the other guilds. A mob of players split into two groups. One group went to chase Flowing Tree, while the other group ran towards Lord Grim. Ye Xiu's response was the same as Huang Xiaoshan's. He also had Lord Grim run further into the forest. Flowing Tree wasn't too far from him, and at this moment he understood what was going on. He began chatting angrily non-stop. Ye Xiu completely ignored him as if he wasn't listening. The two ran someplace and then suddenly split. One left, one right. Right at this moment, the pursuers saw the two split. Lonely Drink didn't hesitate and chased after Lord Grim. A few players made a suggestion. "If there are already people chasing on that side, then we should go to this side." As a result, the remaining players rushed towards Flowing Tree. Just as they began running, someone shouted, "Wait!" No one waited. Everyone continued to chase. This person could only run while saying, "I just searched up flowing tree. He's level 27, level 27. Why are we be chasing him?" Everyone heard this. Some players stopped because what he said was true. Level 27. At this level, the character could only run Boneyard, but that was already past them. The game progressed this way. The closer they got to the end game, the early game records would become less and less valuable. For example, the Frost Forest record. When the players were all level 20, when the record was set, everyone felt that the team was extremely amazing and that the guild was powerful. But this amazing impression wouldn't continue being kept. It needed other records to keep up the image, and it needed records for dungeons at the peak of the current state of the game. Only these high-level dungeons would be noted by players. At the present state of the game, it would be great to go up on TV for the Line Canyon dungeon records. Even if they weren't the final holders of the record, it would still be more valuable than setting a new one for Frost Forest. Plus, whoever held the final record could use it as proof of their strength. All of the experienced players understood this. The reason Ye Xiu was able to create such a movement was because of this. As long as they could kill Lord Grimm and his team a few times, they would be able to stall their leveling speed and restrict their development. As long as they could widen the distance in their levels, future dungeon records would be fought for as usual by the big guilds, and by the time Lord Grimm leveled to there, the records would no longer be as valuable. By then, the 10th server players would already be paying attention to higher-level dungeons. By maintaining this type of level difference, it didn't matter how great Lord Grimm's strength was, because the impact he'd have on the big guilds, development would be greatly reduced.